Okay, here we go. So thank you for joining us. This is the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting for 9 a.m. Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just taking a moment to bring us all together here today. So at this time is citizen input, and I do have two requests to speak, and this is the opportunity for items that are not on the agenda, and thanks for joining us on Monday. So Gage Thompson and Paige Thompson will be following. Yep. So these are 3-minute opportunities.
Yeah, good morning and thank you guys for having us. I want to speak today about the vector control. On Monday, we had a board meeting that I attended and the vector control was there. During that meeting, the Oregon state law is requiring that annual meeting for the board members to represent all concerns of citizens who are interested. And I had reported some concerns, and I know it's possible other people had reported concerns too. And I felt that during that meeting that the concerns that were brought were not the concerns of some of the citizens. And with the way that all the board members of the vector control had stepped down, I find that suspicious, and I was kind of heated. I remember I said something again to Patty about it, being a family and it not looking good, that there was a family that was doing it. And I think Patty was right about that. And my suspicion in feeling that way too is that I was feeling that the real issues with the vector control were being scapegoated as the lady who brought the initial concern for the financial issue redacted her statement and stepped down, and then two other people from the board voluntarily stepped down, leaving just the family, and then the lady stepped down as well, leaving just one member of the board. So then it seems like we can get a new board and the problems are solved, right? Because was some sort of money issue, which I'm not sure about entirely. But there is a statement I want to read from the vector control, something they had posted on the internet. And they said, "We operate under Oregon State Chapter 452 and not through a contract with Deschutes County." So I want to know what that means, that the vector control does not recognize Deschutes County as an authority, but only the state of Oregon. I've heard when I've called around, I talked to an attorney, Mrs. Grass, who works for the state, and she said that our vector control is the only vector control in all of the states of Oregon that is not run by the county, and it is a sovereign entity. And so I believe the true way to amend this situation is to dismantle Four Rivers vector control and start Deschutes County vector control, so that the vector control will be under control of the county instead of being able to negate the county for any responsibilities. And the reason that this has been brought to my attention is we live in Sun River, and they used to have a policy where you could sign up not to have your property sprayed. I requested not to have my property sprayed and spread the information to my neighbors, and a lot of people signed it and didn't want their property sprayed with vector control. This angered vector control, and I caught them spraying my property, and when I asked them why, they said that it was a courtesy and they had no obligation to fulfill not spraying properties. The next day, they deleted it, and now there's no option. Yes.
Well, first he called and he,
Thank you for joining us, Paige.
sorry, hi.
Little introduction
Hi,
by your name.
everyone. Yeah, I'm his wife. I've heard him on most of the phone calls and everything, and I've been there with him, when he's like talking to vector control and like Warren Hansen and everything. Yeah, so he first like filled out that form, and then he, made sure, like he called them and asked about it too, like what that would do. And they said they wouldn't spray the house to the right or the left. That was just a verbal thing that they said, like that they said that was their policy.
Photo of
But
policy.
Yeah. And then so what happened is we watched them the next time they would spray. And first of all, they didn't even have a schedule. Engage asked them to have a schedule. We didn't even know when they were spraying, and then they made a schedule. So they didn't even have a schedule for who knows how long, which is a problem. You know, you want to keep your kids, your animals, and everything inside. Like that's a chemical. But anyway, so he got them to have a schedule, and then yeah, once they didn't do what they said they were going to do, like not spray the house to the right or the left, then we called them and talked to the woman who answers the phones. And that's when she said it was a courtesy. They didn't spray our house, but they turned it on for the house in
sprayed
front
the house
of
last
and
night.
behind. Yeah. And then in regards to that, we called her and then she was upset, clearly upset at the phone. And then it started to feel like a personal attack thing because she was like, I've been reading all your posts on the Nextdoor app, and you know, you've gotten over half the neighborhood now to fill out this form, and we're going to revise this form. And then what happened is and then she said, like, we're going to have somebody come out on your property and make sure you have bee boxes and everything like that, which nobody showed up on our property because maybe they weren't allowed to do that. But there was like threats then. And it's like, that feels like a personal attack. That's really strange. We just want people to know that they can fill out this form. Like, that's really odd that you're angry now. And then they took down the form. And I want to know, why would you take down the form if you're for the people? This is just something you can opt out of for whatever reason. It said you can opt out, and then they took away the form. And that seems really wrong. And then they did spray our house last night because
And
we
we
did
have
what you
signs.
said. We put up the signs and everything. And they did not abide by that. Like, I don't know, they just don't care. They don't like us now. I'm not sure what's going on. So,
So my personal concern in this matter is that if anyone, for whatever reason, health reasons, they want to grow food organically, they want to be a place where native species can be protected, they don't have that option by the law because Oregon state law says that vector control has full power to spray any vectors and go onto any private property anywhere in the county. And when it comes to changing that law, they say we don't have to listen to the county, we just follow the state law. So in order to actually get them to respect private property for health reasons or whatever reason it might be, we would have to legislatively change the whole Oregon state law, when in fact, I believe they should be underneath our county and responsible to you guys in the first place.
Great. Well, thank you very much for both of you for joining us. As I say, I'm engaged with this also, and I've attended some of the board meetings. I attended the budget committee meeting, and you attended our Monday session on this. So, yeah, I mean, let's keep working together on this. As I said, they're in a really rough time, just the dynamics of who's leading, who's following in the district right now. But I think we can get to where you want to be because, I mean, asking to not be sprayed should be a pretty black and white opportunity for anybody in the district. So, yeah, thank you very much. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would encourage you to, write up what you just shared with us, so that we can ask the appropriate people to dig into it. On the higher level questions of, dissolving the district and reforming something else. As you could tell from Monday, the Board of Commissioners is very concerned about the governance of the vector control district. I'm hopeful after Monday's meeting that we will get some of the changes that we're looking for in terms of better governance from the vector control district. And as you've discussed, it doesn't seem like they have done anything necessarily illegal, but whether they're being as transparent as possible, whether they're being responsive to their the constituents of their district or not, those are significant questions. But just know that we are interested in seeing better governance from that district, and we'll be actively tracking that kind of the evolution of this new board.
And we will have one more joint session with the Board of Commissioners as a vector district required ORS requirement to meet with the vector control district as an operational update. And that will happen in the fall, maybe about September or something. And we've done that annually.
But the fall is probably after
Yeah,
the
but
season of spraying. And so honestly, I would contact the three people that were just put on the board, and just so they are aware that if you've opted out, that should be truly respected. So.
Thank you
I
for
thank-
joining us today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming in. We needed to hear from you in person.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I will send a report. I apologize that I honestly wasn't able to finish it.
Yep.
At
Oh,
once. so.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
This is citizen input. Is there anyone else for any item that's not on the agenda? And anyone remote? Okay, so seeing none, at this time, consent agenda. We do have two items that showed up in the last few days. So following from our Monday board meeting, we decided to move forward the approval of revision for policy for a capital asset policy, and then also a contract for CompuNet for Microsoft 365 licensing renewal. So those are added items.
I have to ask legal counsel a question about recusal. So, item number one is approval of this formula program grant from ODOT. I sit on the Oregon Transportation Commission, the issuing, the issuing agency for this agreement. A couple of months ago, talking about the STIF grants, I recused myself from the Oregon Transportation Commission decision to approve the awards because Deschutes County is one of the qualified entities that receives these grants. So I'm curious whether I should recuse myself on this one too. At the Oregon Transportation Commission, it's on the issuing end of the grant. On this end, it's on the receiving end of the grant. But do you have any opinion on that?
I think ultimately it's going to be your decision on whether or not you believe that you can be impartial in making that decision. But if you are only acting on one half of that, whether it's the issuance or the acceptance, I think that it would be sound for you to decide to participate if you choose to. So because you recuse yourself on the issuance, I think that participating in the acceptance, it would be
Legally,
reasonable.
Okay.
Is there a motion for consent agenda items?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second it, but I do want to make a comment.
Discussion, okay.
Yes, I noticed that there are a lot of leases in our on our consent agenda. They seem to be all here. And honestly, I think because we own so many square foot of property in Deschutes County, we need to look at what our maintenance is going to be costing us in the future. And we are doing a lot of either zero or incredibly low leases. And we're going to have to come up with the maintenance costs or the new roof or whatever. So I feel like consolidating all these in this packet, that policy needs to be reevaluated.
Well, and I would acknowledge item number 4 is the Mosaic Community Health lease at the Courtney Building. And that's, in support of our CCBHC. So that is a policy choice of, hosting the health service provider associated with our behavioral health efforts. So, I mean, there
Yes.
are policy choices there.
But they are leaving in 2 years and currently they are only paying utilities. So, I mean, I just feel like, okay, we're going to have a lot of costs that are going to pop up. And then the building in Redmond, the Kingwood building that's now going to be leased. I was trying to figure out how many square foot they're actually using that building, but I believe we have millions of dollars in that building. So I would love to see who's actually in that building July 1st and what are, how are we using the building and what is our revenue for that building? Because we spent millions of dollars on it, millions.
And Commissioner, I'm coordinating with our facilities department, health services, other departments. We'll provide that update to you and to the full board in July. So yeah, very good question. So we can.
So kind of a
Right.
survey of what we have, what we're leasing, what's about.
Exactly.
And we do have a couple of members of our health services leadership team here with us if we have specific questions about specific buildings that we want answered right now.
No, I just felt like, it costs a lot of maintenance. We've seen inflation hitting the maintenance and, it just seems like Deschutes County does a lot of good, but we're going to be the one with the bill in the end. So. Just want to make the
Acknowledged.
community aware of
Yep.
that problem.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? This is the consent agenda. Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Adair,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. Thank you.
Oh, I did have a public comment.
Oh, please.
Did we have anybody online? Was anybody online? We recognize that?
Yeah, I asked if there was any.
Okay, so it ended up that the House Bill 3135, the Juniper bill that I put my heart and soul into for 7 counties, it is 5.2 million. And apparently the funding is not in that bill now, but it will be the exact same funding. So Deschutes County, if you are one of those property owners, the 21,000 property owners plus that had that high risk and you have junipers, you need to get a hold of Deschutes County Soil and Water because there is going to be funding. I'm not sure how much they will allocate per person, but I'm really hoping if you have junipers, this is a chance to get some help from that funding of the House Bill 3135. So it is only $585,000, but that's better than zero. So, there's going to be funding out there. Apparently, we could use a lot more money, but it's a great start. So thank you to Representative Breeze Iverson for her efforts on that bill. And, hopefully we can start taking out junipers sooner rather than later. More junipers.
Okay, thank you for that. Item number 11, Criminal Justice Commission Illegal Marijuana Market Enforcement Grant Application. So this deadline has passed. We're discussing the application that has been put out there. And then Jeff Price, nice to meet you. Yes.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Danielle Martell, the management analyst for our illegal marijuana team. I came with Jeff because he's brand new. So
See, I had to look up his name, but I said hi to him. Yep.
It came from the Marines, though, right?
21-year career. and
Yes,
Spent some time with HP and Amazon.
yes, that's what I heard. So, well, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you very much.
So as you know, we've been on Justice grant program since 2018. This is the same grant program that they are allowing agencies to apply for money again, whether you are a new applicant or an established applicant. So we submitted that, and I apologize, we did not know we had to.
Logistics, yeah.
So we put in our information. It was due on June 12th to see if we could get more funding for the next 2 years. We will not know the answer to that until probably July or August, which they'll then ask us to submit our wants and needs. Then they'll go over that again and then let us know, probably what I read, they'll let us know and release the money in October of this year. So it's always a competitive grant cycle to get this money. And I think it's quite a bit less than in the past. So we are crossing our fingers that we will still be accepted with this grant. But since we've been on the original and only 4 agencies were, I think we have a good chance at that. So.
Yeah. So just acknowledging, so for grants like this, the idea is to close the loop. When we go for a grant, Deschutes County proper, anywhere in Deschutes County, we do an annual financial audit of the whole organization. And we used to have this item that would just popped right out. It's like, well, every time we have a grant, we have a requirement to satisfy the grant and then report on the grant. And we just had loose ends there. So that's why we're bringing it through the front end, the Board of Commissioners. So everybody's kind of hearing about it, finance, audit, just everybody knows that, oh, there's a grant here. The requirements to satisfy this grant are this. We did do the satisfaction and our annual review can be clean. So that's why we do this, just let you know. So it's just a partnership. And then also, this is for the Sheriff's Office and District Attorney's Office also.
Yes, they will be partnering with us again on applying for funds. I did the application and then included them as they will also be part of it if they give us the money.
Yeah.
So then we work with them on their wants and needs and then submit our budget and see what they end up saying for us. So like I said, there's been times where they've completely accepted it and other times they've made us reduce it. So we're hopeful.
Great. When you said that the amount was less this year, so the total available is reduced by a certain amount, or?
From what we have been told by CJC, it looks like it's probably up to $7.5 million, possibly only 5, but they still haven't gotten complete notification on how much there really is. And so that's what they're estimating. And so once all these applications go through and then they get reviewed, I believe they'll let us know what that final number is, but they did indicate that it would be less than in years past. And that could be because they partially get funded by the federal government, but I'm not sure. I don't want to say I'm sure, but this is what submitted to us, at least as far as, I mean, they're hopeful they'll get more, but they don't want to promise something they can't.
And this is not dependent upon the legislative budget setting that's happening in Salem right now as we speak.
I don't believe so. They had a big meeting where, you know, everyone that's trying to get money for grants and stuff is obviously putting that out there, and then we'll see what kind of funds we get back. But it's going to be more competitive this time. So just because of a little bit less money.
But so you said between 5 and 7.5 million.
Yes.
What was it? What was it in the last biennium? Or what did, how much?
We
was it?
got almost 1.7 million just for us last time alone. So, and actually the last time that we got the money, we didn't have to reapply. They had extra funds and then allowed us to put in that budget, and then they gave us the funds. So, before, I think it was close to 2 million that we got. So with that many people applying for this, that's why I'm a little, you know, worried that we're not going to get as much, but we believe we'll still be operational and successful, but just maybe on a tighter budget. So.
Mhm. And these funds are merged or combined with the funds that the Cannabis Advisory Panel allocates over each year?
No. The Cannabis Advisory Commission, when they put those funds, it goes into the sheriff's budget, but and this is as far as I know, Jeff. We get our funds for the grant, and then the commission, when they decide how much funds goes to the sheriff's office, how that gets separated would be a question for him, but since he's so brand new, I
Okay.
don't know if he knows that yet.
I can answer that.
Well, this could be a great follow-up if you know, we don't need to know today. And you know, I'm obviously going to be supportive of submitting of this grant application, but it would be helpful to understand how those funds all work together
Sure.
to add up to a complete program, because I'm pretty sure that those funds are allocated to our illegal marijuana market enforcement program efforts.
Correct. And I believe that last time that it was approved, I think it was for $95,000.
Mhm.
That goes towards helping us with all of the overtime that we have to pull so many resources from our agency. And then you have other agencies like Redmond and all the different agencies that come together to help us on those. That definitely helps with the overtime cost for that, because some of these operations are lengthy and require a lot of help from other people. So that I do know they discussed at the Cannabis Advisory meeting.
Hi, my name is Jessica Vanderpool. I'm with the Sheriff's Office. I know previously we had received $100,000 and that was associated with a specific FTE. This current FY26, we're getting 95,000. And I think that this year it's also still tied to a specific FTE, but they're trying to kind of open it up so that it can just fill the gaps between what we're able to get for the marijuana grant and our actual costs.
Okay, great.
So is there a motion? So this is to authorize this application.
I would definitely make that motion. Thank you so much
go.
for being here, what you do. And I know we did go on a drug, what was it, a drug bus? There was actually one out by me, and then we went to the 49 greenhouses out in Alfalfa a couple years ago. It was really, what is it, slave labor, tragic situation, and 49 greenhouses. So how long had that been in operation? So the motion is authorizing Deschutes County, the fact that they, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office and the Deschutes County District Court's Office has applied for a Criminal Justice Commission illegal marijuana market enforcement grant for 25 to 27.
So is that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
So remember, this is illegal marijuana activity and there's a legal market out there. So it's still that cat and mouse game for some people just playing in the illegal world. So we want to, tamp that down, but also welcome the people that are working in the legal market. And we went through a lot over the years on this topic. So any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang.
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes. Thank you so much. Nice to meet
Thank
you.
you. Nice to meet you too.
Item number 12, Correctional Facility System Controls update. Morning, Captain.
Captain Michael Schultz with the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office and the Corrections Division, and I'm joined with.
I'm Heather Haroff, the county's procurement manager, and the solicitation support for this solicitation, or procurement support for this solicitation.
Mhm.
And Jessica Vanderpool.
Back here again. So as you know from your paperwork, we're here to seek the award to move forward on hiring our contractor to assist with our integrated computer systems as we move electronic upgrade. As you know, in 2013, that was the last time we've done a computer upgrade. And we've budgeted over the years to continue to do it because in jail world, generally you want to upgrade your electronics every 5 to 7 years. As you see, we're about 10 years now. And some of that is we were able to make our system last. One, because of the great people that we have work in our IT, information technology, that went and got parts off of eBay to keep it working. And two, we had other things coming up like our the systems on our jail to keep our buildings cool, the HVAC system. So we had to put a number of money to replace those. So now we're at this point where we're able to budget for this system, and we've done a great process to be able to look at 4 different vendors. And the person that came out on top were the Corrections Technology Group that we'd like to award with that and seek your approval for that. I do want to say, since I have a little bit of time, it's been great having Heather with us, not only to guide us through a professional process for bidding procurement and working with our attorneys so that we didn't have much lapse in process. And of course, the staff members that helped us do this, Christopher Gibson, one of our corrections sergeants, Joe Meeks, our maintenance supervisor lead, India Looney, who is one of our deputies that operates the control center, Ashton Kent, one of our sergeants. So it's been great having them involved in this system because it took months, and we sent them out to learn about other systems. But keep in mind, really, we have to really watch what we're doing the next 5 to 10 years because these systems grow old and we have to look at replacement. I really think, we call it I call it the IT unit, the IT. Well, eventually it's going to be the AI. I don't know what we're going to call it then, but that's coming and technology is moving quickly. So we're already thinking about what that means. And of course, we've had a number of conversations about the public safety campus upgrade, which you guys have been great on assisting us. And those conversations have to keep moving forward for the next 5 years. That's what we're going to be looking at. So.
Great.
Mhm.
I think of that 2013 timeframe as when the jail expansion was completed. So we're integrating old and new at that time. So now this will be more of a complete upgrade for the integration of the whole system.
Captain Schultz, thank you so much for being at the head of our jail. So appreciate your compassion and what you do there. And I know this isn't, I'm so glad you're asking for something. It's been 12 years. So I'm sure you probably needed this about 5 years ago at least. But thanks for coming to us with this procurement that we can approve. And thank you, Heather, for your job. But I wanted to ask you if you would please do another analysis of the jail like you did, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 months ago. I don't know, was it that long ago?
Yeah, and we knew you were going to ask.
I know, I know.
I have our Jessica Ewing, our behavioral health specialist one. She's looking at that data right now. We want to be accurate and be able to defend every person.
Yes,
So she's on it right now. And I'll say it was brought up again today, Jessica.
yes.
We'll
Well,
get that. to
no,
you.
thank you so much, because I remember when I went to Salem at our commissioners meeting, and I said that 80% of our jail had mental illness and substance use, and people in the room went, oh, no, 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 that's not possible. And then you did a person-by-person analysis, and it was I think it was 92 or 93%, wasn't it?
Yeah, Lieutenant Mike Gill spent the time, went through that with Jessica, looking at every person. And it's time consuming because we really want to be accurate and err on the side that
Of
we're
caution.
not throwing names in there. So that's what we're seeing. And now the jails are reporting that around the state, because under the National Sheriff's Association, they were deeming about 74%. But all the local jails, especially in Oregon, with the drug addiction that we
Drug
have,
addiction.
it's gone. It's encompassing all our correctional facilities. Hence why we'd like to look at trauma-informed design when we start moving forward and looking at electronic upgrades. What does that mean? And with AI, I think my world, I think AI is going to make this way better for all of us, and for not only for the inmates that live in our area, but also for the staff coming to work. We know that when a jail is built in another county, when they use technology and trauma-informed design, their staffing ratios go down because people want to work there. So you see that instead of working in a dungeon, which I think we've done, we've had the same model over the past 50 years. We got to look at that model for the type of people that we're housing.
I know you
How do
want skylights.
Yes, skylights, open air, access, we talk about and I can talk about this all.
I know you
We
can.
talk about bringing that outside in, working with, Holly Harris is in the back of the room, her team to come in and help us with public health and mental health, giving them access so they don't have to go through the red tape to assist our deputies, makes them healthier.
Right. It's so important. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm so glad you didn't have to evacuate last week.
Thank you.
With that, I'll move approval of document number 2025-605.
And I'll second it.
Okay, any other discussion? So this is the notice of intent to award this contract. Seeing nothing else, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks.
Item number 13, presentation and status of greater sage grouse in Deschutes County.
Right. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Nicole Mardell, Senior Planner with Deschutes County Planning. Today, I'm here to just briefly introduce your speakers. This is an informational presentation on the status of sage grouse that the board requested when you adopted the new sage grouse habitat maps earlier this year. So I believe Skylar will go into quite a bit of background on the program, sage grouse protection. So just wanted to introduce our speakers. We have Skylar Vold, the sage grouse conservation coordinator with ODF&W, and Dr. Christian Hagen, Associate Professor and Senior Researcher with Oregon State University. Thanks so much for being here, and I
Joining
will
us.
turn it over to you.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for having us. Can you see my slideshow?
There it is.
Yeah. Excellent. For the record, I'm Skylar Vold. I'm the Sage Grouse Conservation Coordinator with ODFW, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And today we'll be talking about the status of sage grouse in Deschutes County. And before I get into the status, I just want to give us a brief background, Sage Grouse Life History 101. Why do these birds matter? And to discuss why they matter, first we have to go into their life history. So in the springtime, this is the most common time to see sage grouse. This is where they're breeding at their lek locations. So they go to these communal breeding grounds year after year, and this is how we can count them. We count the number of males that are attending these known lek locations. And the other important piece here is that we know that the female sage grouse, once they're bred, they nest within 4 miles of those leks. So every area that is surrounding, generally every area within 4 miles of the lek location is an important breeding location for these birds. In the early summer, they move into their nesting and their early brood rearing period, where the chicks rely on wildflowers, forbs, insects to grow big and strong. And then once the broods grow up, then they're really focused into the mesic areas, the wet meadows, those habitats that are unique on the landscape. They make up a very small portion of it, but they need those associated wet areas with the more green vegetation in that late summer, the dry period. And then when we move into the winter, sage grouse forage exclusively on sagebrush, and they're one of the only species to do so. They actually put on weight in the winter, which is pretty impressive given the location that these birds actually make a living in the cold, snowy months of eastern Oregon, southeastern Oregon. It's also important to note that they have high fidelity to their breeding, nesting, and wintering areas, so they go back to these areas year after year during their seasonal migrations. For a bird, they're a long-lived species, so over 5 years is a long time for a bird to live. And they have low productivity. So rather than pumping out a bunch of chicks, they generally focus on adult female survival, unlike a quail or a chukar, which can have multiple broods in a season. Sage grouse have a single brood, and generally, well, not generally, but often this brood doesn't even survive. So they focus more so on their adult survival, which is why their populations are slow to recover following disturbances to their habitat. So they're a specialist, not a generalist. And jumping into what sage grouse need or what they require, really, they require vast expanses of intact sagebrush habitat to make a living. You can see this photo on the right. It was taken just a few weeks ago in the Brothers Pack, just southwest of Brothers. Lots of sagebrush, lots of forbs, lots of bunch grasses, native bunch grasses, and not too many trees. That's what sage grouse require.
What's a pack?
Oh, sorry. PAC, Priority Area for Conservation. It's an acronym for these areas.
Figured it was a good acronym, but
Yeah. Sorry, I meant to go into that, and probably we'll discuss it later. But thank you for calling that out. Sage grouse.
How many, I saw that there were 8 eggs in that nest. Do they normally have 8?
Yeah.
Or is that their average?
It's probably about 8 on average. Yeah.
But they don't survive then?
Well, the nest success is generally pretty low. Like you're talking about range wide, maybe 50% of the nests will survive. And Dr. Hagan will go into this specifically in the Brothers and Paulina areas in Deschutes County a little bit later. But the sage grouse, to hide their nests and their broods, they require overhead cover, and that's generally by sagebrush or grasses, good perennial bunch grass cover, or sometimes even taller forbs. And again, they require those wildflowers, wet meadows, mesic areas, playas in the late spring and the summer. And generally they avoid human activity and they avoid human disturbance, and they generally also avoid wooded areas. And backing up even one more step is why do we study sage grouse? Why do we care about them? And it's not specific to the sage grouse, but this species acts as both an umbrella and an indicator species of the sagebrush ecosystem. So because they are a sagebrush obligate, they require these sagebrush habitats for their whole existence. There are many other species that actually live in the sagebrush, and we have studied sage grouse long enough, back to the 1960s in many cases, that we know these species are doing poorly in an area or they're doing well in an area. So the other associated sagebrush species are likely doing the same. So generally, healthy sage grouse populations equate to a healthy sagebrush ecosystem. And the concern is that we have seen long-term population declines in range-wide and in Oregon. So in the Great Basin, populations have declined 42% since 2002, 59% since 1985, and up to 80% since 1967 in the most recent range-wide publication by the USGS. So that's pretty concerning. Sage-grouse were deemed warranted but precluded for listing under the Endangered Species Act in 2010, also very important to note. And then the conservation commitments by the western states, especially the state of Oregon, helped with that 2015 decision that these birds were not warranted for listing under the Endangered Species Act. And that's huge, right? We want these birds to be managed by the state and not by the federal agency.
You define the Great Basin.
The Great Basin is generally southeastern Oregon, southwestern Idaho, and then much of Nevada, maybe a little bit of California.
I think of it kind of as the Intermountain West, Cascades and Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, the high
It's
desert.
like a basin area that was referred to.
Yeah, I think I have a little later on, I'll have a slide that shows what we're talking about for the Great Basin. And jumping into Oregon's commitment specifically to prevent the ESA listing, Governor Kate Brown signed Executive Order 1518, providing direction for state agencies which fund, operate, or permit actions in sage-grouse habitat. So this allowed the state to fully implement the Oregon Sage-Grouse Action Plan, which was developed by the Greater Sage-Grouse Conservation Partnership, SageCon, leading up to that 2015 decision. And importantly, it also linked the established land use rules to limit large-scale development in sage-grouse habitats. That was one of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's main piece that they were looking at when they were looking at that Endangered Species Act decision. So we have the LCDC or the DLCD OAR 660 Division 23 Rule 115, the Greater Sage-Grouse Rule, and then we have ODFW or Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife's Administrative Rules 635 Division 140 Rules 0 through 25. So when we're talking about sage-grouse habitats, there are two that we refer to. Core habitats, which are those necessary to conserve 90% of Oregon sage-grouse populations. This is listed in our sage-grouse management plan, as well as the state action plan that I mentioned earlier. And then we have the low-density areas, which provide those additional breeding, summer, and migratory habitats. So it's really the connectivity among the core areas. And from this map, you can see that sage-grouse habitat covers a large portion of Oregon, all of southeastern Oregon, so significant portions of Crook, Deschutes, Lake, Harney, Malheur, and Baker counties contain core and low-density sage-grouse habitat. And now the fun begins. We can zoom into Deschutes County. So looking here, you can see that the core areas are in red and the blue is the low density. All of these dots are actual lek locations. The yellow dots being occupied leks, so those that have had sage-grouse within the past 10 years consistently. The blue dots are pending leks, which either have not had consistent use or have been found very recently, like the past year or two. And then we have the unoccupied dots, the red dots, and the historic lek locations are the black dots. So you can see that there are about 25 occupied sage-grouse leks in Deschutes County and about 5 pending leks. When we look at the population trends, so on the left we have the Brothers Pack. Sorry, I didn't point these out, but this left area is the Brothers Pack. So most of Deschutes County contains the Brothers Pack and also a little bit of the Paulina Pack on the right. North Wagon Tire, there's just a small bit. The delineation between Paulina and North Wagon Tire is Highway 20. So generally, when we're talking about Deschutes County, we're talking about the Brothers Pack and we're talking about some important low density or connectivity habitat among these core areas. So when we reference the population trends in the Brothers Pack, you can see that on the left, the population trends of the Paulina Pack on the right, and you can see that, well, up to about 1985, we saw some pretty significant declines from 85 to about 2003-ish. There were additional population declines, and for the Paulina Pack, we've seen some stability since 2008, 2009. But between 2003 or 2007 and 2019, we've seen some pretty significant declines in the Brothers Pack. And it's important to note that sage grouse, or really most game birds, cycle naturally based on the El Nino, La Nina precipitation cycles. So with increased precipitation, you have more grass cover, more forbs. These populations are more productive, so they're pumping out more chicks. Compounding productivity, you can get these increases in the population cycle. What you want to see is stability. So you want those peaks and troughs of the population cycle to be stable. Generally, that's not what we're seeing in most of the range-wide sage-grouse populations. We see these troughs getting lower and lower and lower every 5 to 12 years or so, which is concerning. Again, from that 2009 to 2023 timeframe, we did see about approximate stability in the Plina Pack. It's also important to note that the Brothers Pack and Plina Pack are actually trending differently. So when you zoom in, we most recently, this is a very recent model from USGS that we contracted, where we have, this shows our estimated true abundance of these populations. So on the left again is the Brothers Pack, and you can see that in 2024, our estimated population in that area was just under 1,000 sage grouse, where in the Plina Pack on the right, you can see that the estimated population was about 1,700 sage grouse. However, these two areas, even though they're adjacent, they are trending differently. So the trough of the Brothers Pack population cycle was in 2019, and we've seen increased production and increased population since then. So all of the precipitation that we've gotten over the past few years, the Brothers Pack has responded positively to. And for whatever reason, the Plina Pack has not. So the Plina Pack is trending differently with its trough in 2023. And it's interesting to look at, and Dr. Hagen will describe potential reasons for this in his presentation in a few minutes. So just for my last few slides, I just want to discuss why Deschutes County specifically is unique. And the first reason is that this sage grouse population is a genetically distinct subpopulation of sage grouse. So from this map, you can see that it is the westernmost extent of sage grouse range-wide. And this genetic analysis shows that the Great Basin population, which includes much of southeastern Oregon, southwestern Idaho, and northern and central Nevada, that's all considered the same sage grouse population, the Great Basin population. And then our central Oregon population is part of that Great Basin, but it's a distinct subpopulation. So that's important to note. And additionally, Deschutes County specifically has some very good sage grouse habitat currently. It is intact state A habitat. So this map shows lots of greens, which is good. We generally look at habitat remotely. When we're looking at this landscape scale, we use these remote products, which have gotten very good in recent years. So all of that green area means that there's good sagebrush cover and there's good perennial bunch grasses and forbs in much of this area. You see very little yellow and very little red, which means that in the understory, there's very little cheatgrass, which is an invasive annual grass that makes up a lot of the other understory in other portions of this state. For example, I'll just jump to this one and then I'll go back to the photos that I had there. When we're looking at Malheur County, this is the Cow Lakes Pack. You can see all of this red. That's all invasive annual grasses with very little shrub cover. So when you're talking about what sage grouse need, sagebrush and bunch grasses and forbs. This area of Deschutes County, this Brothers Pack, is very important because it has all of those components and it hasn't seen significant wildfires, which generally cause these invasive annual grasses to perpetuate, which is what we see here in the Cow Lakes Pack. So these are some photos that I took in the Brothers Pack just 3 weeks ago or so. You can see sagebrush as far as the eye can see, plenty of forbs, plenty of native bunch grasses, and good sagebrush cover for these hens to hide their nests. And my last slide, just looking ahead at conserving Deschutes County sage-grouse habitat going forward. Keeping these habitats intact and unfragmented will ensure sage-grouse population persistence into the future. And limiting exurban development and large-scale development in these habitats is going to be key to keeping these habitats intact. Additionally, we want to continue to prevent large-scale wildfire because it's really probably the largest cause of sage-grouse population declines in Oregon. We want to continue to treat phase 1 and 2 juniper in these areas. Dr. Hagen's lab has shown actually population level benefits for sage-grouse by treating these encroaching or expanding junipers in the Warner Pack, which is Lake County. And then we want to continue to treat invasive weeds and grasses.
And the good news is Lake County just got juniper funding for removal.
Excellent.
I don't know where they're going to target, but it was a significant amount of funding, so they're really happy about that.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, hey, we're on the same side. Isn't this great?
That is great.
Yes. So
So that's all
they
that
just take over and
Yeah.
yeah, how do you get rid of cheatgrass, honestly? Is there a way to get rid of it? You're saying we don't want it here, but I'm just wondering, what do people do that have cheatgrass on their property now?
At a small scale, there are options for herbicide. At a large scale, it's much more difficult. And I really don't think that we've gotten to that. Like once you get tens of thousands of acres of just invasive alien grasses, cheatgrass, and even worse is Medusa head in a lot of cases. I don't know that Deschutes County has any Medusa head yet. You do not want it.
Okay, you don't want it. Okay.
But yeah, spot treating, I think it's a Mazapic potentially is the name. I'm no weed treatment expert, but there's quite a bit of research out of several USGS labs that show if you treat this frequently, that you can make some headway for the invasive annual grasses as long as it hasn't taken over yet.
Well, 7 counties were in that: Lake, Klamath, us, Crook, Jefferson, and Wheeler County. So I don't see Wheeler County on your map, but still, they have a tremendous juniper problem too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Stop sharing.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Christian Hagen, a research faculty at Oregon State University. I'm going to give you just a brief overview of some of the research we've been conducting here in Deschutes and Crook County over the last 3 years. Before I do that, just a quick comment. Having once served in the role that Skylar is in for ODF&W, I think it's important for you all to know and the public that Oregon is really seen as a leader in sage-grouse conservation. So our colleagues in other states look very closely at what we do here. And all the work that has been done here is really held up as one of the models of the way to conserve grouse in a collaborative and partnership manner. So hats off to ODF&W and to the counties and to the state for really standing grouse up and doing the right thing. So greater sage grouse research in Oregon, Central Oregon. So Skylar showed these 2 plots. Here is the Brothers Pack in blue and Paulina Pack in pink, and then their respective population trends. And I show both of these trends because when we were talking with our conservation partners, BLM and ODF&W, back in 2019, when we started talking about conducting work here, there was a lot of concern about the Brothers Pack. So what I've superimposed here, this dotted line, is actually this line from the Brothers Pack on the Paulina. So at the time, it was suggesting that Brothers would be crashing much more quickly than Paulina. So as a collective, BLM, U.S. Forest Service, ODF&W, we set out to better understand why the Brothers Pack is trending differently than Paulina. And to do that, we wanted to identify the key limiting factors contributing to those population declines. So focusing in on nest success, chick survival, and as Skylar rightly pointed out, adult survivorship is a key component to their life history. So how do we do that? Well, we go out and we catch grouse at night. We call it the great snipe hunt. We go out with spotlights and loudspeakers. We look for eye shine. They get dazzled by the light. Once we catch a grouse, we then affix one of these GPS transmitters onto their back. And so the beauty of these GPS transmitters is they give us 5 locations a day, 365 days a year. We don't have to go to the field to do that. So we have a lighter footprint on the landscape and on the bird because we literally sit back, watch our computers, wait for the data points to tell us where the birds are and what they're doing. And then we proceed to the field to do the appropriate monitoring, which is a far cry from where we were even 10 years ago when we were using standard VHF technology, which in a good week, you would find a bird once. A really good week, you might find them twice. It wasn't uncommon to lose a bird for up to a month at a time. So the amount and quality of information is just, by and large, it's just amazing what we have today. So how do we do this? So using those GPS coordinates, we first are interested in better understanding nest success. And so what we do is we watch those data points come in, and once those data points start stacking and become exact, we have pretty good indication that either the hen is dead, she slipped her collar, or she's on a nest. Send somebody out, they verify she's on the nest. We do our best using that data to figure out when she started incubating. Sage grouse incubate for about 29 days. It's a long month to be sitting under a sage bush. And if she leaves that spot prior to 29 days, we send a technician out, and this panel on the left shows a depredated nest. If she leaves that spot in and around 29 days, we send a technician out to verify that, in fact, this nest was successful. The other thing we do is we monitor our broods through a couple different methods. We do an early morning brood count that you'll see here in the little video. Hopefully it'll play okay. Or we go out at night once they get a bit older, and we'll just spotlight the hen and her broods because they're no longer hiding underneath mom. They usually are standing near her. And so that allows us to count, and we track those broods and the change in brood size from 14 days post-hatch up to 54 days post-hatch at 10-day intervals. And then, of course, we're also interested in how our adults are surviving. So again, it's the same principle. We look for a concentration of points from those GPS locations. If something hasn't moved for a while, we send a technician out, and they go and verify if, in fact, the bird has been killed, as indicated in this lower panel. I guess you can't really see my mouse up there, can you? I apologize. So in the lower right panel there, you can see a feather pile. But we do, some birds, due to molt, or maybe the harness wasn't attached just right, they do slip these things from time to time. And slippage is like 10% or less. So just jumping right into the results, how many birds are we talking about here that we've been monitoring over the last 3 years? And I will say we are currently in the field. I have a new graduate student that is picking up the baton, so to speak, and carry us forward for the next 2 or 3 years, funding pending. So we're monitoring 78 females over the last 3 years from both study areas, with a roughly even split of age classes. So yearlings are a first-year bird. They're not technically a year old yet when they first breed. So we refer to them as yearlings. So it's about an even split of yearlings versus adults. So we're going to focus in on adult survivorship first. So these two curves, the blue is brothers, red is Paulina, and that color scheme will proceed throughout. And so these are monthly survival estimates starting in March, going through February. We start in March because that's when the bulk of our trapping occurs. And you can see in this pattern is what you would expect for grouse and other upland birds, high mortality of females from March to about July. There's a severe cost in reproduction. Laying eggs, sitting on that nest, they are highly susceptible to predation. And then as Skylar pointed out, tremendous survival, almost 100% survival over the winter, eating nothing but sagebrush and actually putting on pounds, if you will. So what does that translate into? Over the course of a year, females and brothers, about 70% of them will survive the year. Paulina, only about 55% will survive the year based on those first 3 years of data. So brothers females are outperforming Paulina females by almost 1.5 times. So when we look at nests, we had 109 nests over that period. You may be asking yourself, well, you only showed me 78 females. So we have 2 reasons for that larger sample size. First, we have multiple females that survive multiple years, and so we get multiple nests off of that female. Secondly, for those females within a given year, for any female, I should say, excuse me, within a given year that loses a nest early enough in incubation, she will try to renest a second time. About 20 to 30% of them will try to renest. On rare occasions, and we had this happen, I think, 3 or 4 times over the course of this 3 years, females that lose their second nest will try and nest a third time. So again, it doesn't happen very often. They have to be in very good condition, so on and so forth. And those clutch sizes get smaller each time. Like that first nest will be 7 to 9 eggs. The second one will be like 4 to 7. And if they do try a third time, they're usually only 2 or 3 eggs. So what does that look like? So nest survival in the brothers pack is right around 40%. Paulina, it's around 28%. So again, brothers is outperforming Paulina. This is kind of contrary to our hypotheses that when we first got into this. Brood monitoring. So this is the real bottleneck in grouse wherever you are, and it gets exacerbated depending on conditions and location. So here you can see we've gone from a sample size of 109 nests to 21 broods. Part of that is we did lose our ability to detect some of these broods just from technology failure, but it's just attrition. And so these are the sample sizes over that period. We have some unknowns because we have a number of broods that show up on private property that the landowners have not been willing to provide us access to, which is what it is. What does that look like? So here again, so Paulina, we're showing, so if you look at that figure in red is Paulina again, very low survival at 14 days post-hatch, even up through 24, but by 34 days post-hatch, they're surviving equal to or maybe greater than their counterparts in brothers. And brothers is showing a fairly steady survival rate over the entire 54-day period. So early brood failure is what we see quite a bit of in Paulina. So to wrap up the demographic piece and looking at limiting factors, we compare our estimates to what we see range-wide, and this is from a large meta-analysis that was done a few years ago. We see that brothers is falling right in the wheelhouse, whether it's adult survival or nest survival. Paulina's underperforming, both in terms of nest survival as well as adult survivorship, although the confidence limits that you can see there in the adult survival panel suggest that there's some possibility that they are actually on par. We see the same pattern with chick survival. Brothers is on par. Paulina is underperforming.
What's the scope of range wide at that?
So that includes everything. It includes all 11 Western states.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yep. Thank you for the clarification. So like I said, when we started out, there was a lot of concern for brothers because the trajectory is much steeper in decline than Paulina.
I know there were fires out in Paulina. Were they in any of this area?
Yes, one of our field crews in 2024 were evacuated twice. The footprint on sage grouse habitat wasn't that large, but where they were living, where our main sort of headquarters was for housing them was at risk. But there was one area north of Paulina that burned a fair bit.
That's
So
what
we lucked out in that regard.
Okay, so it could have been worse.
Could have been worse, yeah.
Okay.
And so I bring up Skylar's figures again. So this is more recent history. And so contrary to what we were hoping to answer is the way it goes in science, right? You think you're going to answer one thing and you end up answering something new. We found out that Paulina is, being outperformed by Brothers. And actually, when you look at the last 3 years of Skylar's figures in relation to our data, again, we haven't generated population growth rates, but the performance of both really suggests it really replicates well the patterns that are being demonstrated by our LEC counts. And another thing to keep in mind, right? 2022, we're still in the midst of one of the worst droughts in over 100 years. 2023, we're in deluge. 2024 is a solid precip year building off of 2023. So we've had some pretty wild environmental conditions. Doesn't take away from that longer history, but it's one reason that we continue to do the research. In an environment that's so stochastic and so variable, such as the high desert, it's important to get, multiple years of information to have the best understanding as possible. So I have just a couple more slides that I thought would be of interest to the commissioners with respect to how these birds are using the landscape. And I'm just focusing here on nesting and brood movements. So again, we have the Brothers and Paulina pack. You'll just note that Paulina, everything's kind of contained within the pack boundary. There's not a lot of movement. Brothers, you kind of see some points going hither and dither. We're going to zoom in a little bit. So we're north of the highway. So this was there was a female captured there in the lower right, denoted by the yellow dots. She then moved up to this butte where the black arrow is pointing, where she successfully nested. And then the little orange dots heading southwest is where she raised her brood.
So those multiple orange dots is the same brood, just,
Exactly.
okay.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, so that's the same brood. So this is the GPS data, 5 locations a day, tracking this hen and her brood over the course of about a 54-day period. And so the hen, she didn't walk up there. Well, she may have walked some of the way, but that's where she nested, and that ridgetop is where she raised her brood. As you can see, there's a pretty incredible situation with Juniper between where she was kind of captured and where she nested. And then she actually returned back to where we caught her, and she spent the following winter back where she was originally captured. So these movements are the ones that really astounded me. The ones up into the buttes are still, like, I don't want to take away from the impressiveness of that, but I kind of anticipated that. But these were just totally out of left field. So this is south of Highway 20, kind of behind Pine Mountain, that region. So this, in the upper part of your screen there, you'll see a green dot. That's the successful nest. Similar, kind of in the lower right, you'll see 2 green triangles. Those are successful nests. So these females hatch those young and then take them on like a 30-kilometer walk through Devil's Garden down to Christmas Valley. It's pretty, and they survive.
Isn't that amazing, though, that it's not what you would think they would be doing? So
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just incredible. And I haven't spent, like, one thing we keep threatening to do, and we've yet to get brave enough to do it, because we're not grouse, we probably wouldn't survive. But I've talked about literally getting a backpack, bunch of water, and hike their trail to see what they saw, just to learn. So anyway, super fascinating in the sense that these birds are using landscapes that we didn't anticipate. We're seeing demographic patterns we didn't anticipate. We're excited to have the opportunity to continue the work to better inform you all in the decisions that you need to make. I did fail to mention at the beginning, really everything I showed here is the result of Becca Kelbel, the largest smiling face you see in all 3 pictures there. She's the graduate student that was responsible for all the data collection for the first 3 years. So with that, we'd open it up to any questions you all might have.
My first question is, so that extensive wandering that the females with the broods do, I mean, would you say that's the reason why there's greater success for the Brothers pack than?
It certainly could be. The other part of our research is we are taking a hard look at avian predator populations, both ravens as well as hawks and eagles. it seems like there's higher avian predation in Paulina.
Mm.
And because they kind of have everything that they need right there in Paulina, you kind of have your sagebrush uplands, you have a lot of mesic resources, so birds get concentrated, other prey sources get concentrated, and therefore the predators concentrate there. So I feel like in part, those wanderings, they may be getting into areas that have are less productive, which seems counterintuitive, but you may also have less predator pressure, if you will, in those areas where they're doing those wanderings.
I think this is so fascinating what you are discovering. And I have a pair of Canadian geese that have their babies at my house. And then there's a huge ponds and they leave, but there's usually like 5 babies every year. And it's really sweet because they always come back. I guess they feel safe and then they take off for the big water. So, but the fact that they're moving that far, that's really, it's interesting that you were able to discover that and what does it really mean and how can we improve the numbers? Like I was looking at 1980, you know, the chart went way up in Brothers and then it started dropping after. What happened in 1980 here? Did it stop raining for a while or does anybody really know?
I think it stopped raining for a while. 2003 was really the last good population estimate that we had, good being the highest population. And we haven't gotten all of the numbers in yet, but what we're seeing this year after 3 solid years of compounding precipitation, good productivity in our sage grouse is likely similar numbers to that 2003, 2005, 6 time frame. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, yes.
Thanks.
So just thinking back, so we asked, you know, let's learn more about this because we adopted the updated range maps associated with, you know, just the land use, the big picture land use in Oregon and in Deschutes County proper. So thank you for joining us. That was just a follow-up from a discussion we had months ago, trying to learn more.
It was actually last October because I was looking at what the information you gave us then. Yeah. So it's really quite fascinating that you're actually getting answers.
You know, looking at those population trend lines, I'm wondering how many years you have to see kind of certain patterns to be able to say, well, this is stable. You know, this is relative, you know, Skylar, you used the term, you know, this is relatively stable for Paulina, even though, you know, we had a dip last year or 2 years ago. I mean, how many years do you need to see before you can say, well, it looks like this population is improving or it's relatively stable?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the most recent research out of USGS has shown that we need to focus on those troughs when we're looking at population trends, because if you're looking at specific years, you might have a peak in the population cycle and then you're looking at a trough. So looking at the population trends from trough to trough, which is kind of what I showed in those trend graphs, where 2023 for Paulina was the most recent trough, where Brothers was 2019. So when we look ahead, maybe 6 to 12 years from now, depending on what this current precipitation pattern does, we will hopefully see a few more years, at least one more year for sure, of increases from 2024 for both Paulina and Brothers. But when we look at the next trough of the cycle, whether that's 6 years from now or 12 years from now, anytime in between, we're hoping that that's relatively stable. So you're talking about having approximately the same abundance in that nadir to the next nadir or the next trough of the cycle.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. One other practical question I have is, yeah, as you may be aware, the county is exploring new solid waste landfill sites. Some of these are out in East County, not too far from the Brothers Pack, and I'm wondering if you can just discuss a little bit what from a, impacts to sage grouse perspective, what some of the concerns we should have as we're evaluating sites. And I mean, if you have any kind of recommendations or guidelines for us on, how far away is far enough? Is it, a couple miles away? Is it 10 miles away? Those kinds of things, or whether, kind of the concerns and impacts just sort of gradually taper off as you get out in distance.
Yeah, that's a great question. There are multiple components to that. So there is the effect of human activity. The landfill itself will generate noise. It'll generate more traffic. And those are components that we look at when we're looking at impacts to sage grouse. But in addition, what we've seen in some other areas is increases in raven densities. And with the currently relatively low densities that we're seeing in the Brothers Pack, that's very concerning because we may see similar impacts that we've seen in other regions. The Baker Pack area has very high raven densities, and that's more of a distinct subpopulation. So it's not really apples to apples comparing Baker to Brothers, even though they are kind of at the edge of the range. But there's just more connectivity here in Brothers than there is in Baker. But it's still, the raven density issue is still very concerning. So if there's increased predators on the landscape, we'll see decreases in productivity in our sage grouse populations.
And I would just add quickly to that. I mean, the science is pretty clear, and I don't remember the thresholds, but enough work has been done on ravens that basically you get X number of density of ravens per square mile, and sage grouse productivity, nest success starts to crash. So there are numbers out there. The question would be is how do you mitigate that in the context of a landfill?
Yeah, and what is the kind of what are the spatial dimensions on that? I mean,
yeah, that's
a landfill would generate, be a raven attractant, but then how far do they wander from that landfill site?
That's a great question. I don't know that anybody's looked at that specifically. There may be new research, Skylar, you're aware of, but I'm not aware. But I mean, they have wings, will fly, and I don't mean to be, cute about that, but as density increases, what tends to happen is birds move further and further out, right, to occupy, habitats that are unoccupied. And so you can see this sort of, the saturation effect, I guess you might call it.
There is some good research out of Dr. John Dinkin's lab about raven movement specifically studied in the Baker region that we could get you some numbers on. I just don't have them offhand.
It would be great to get
Yeah,
some of that
will do.
information.
But what about Highway 20? You were saying like the pack was north of Highway 20. Does that seem to impact them at all? Yes, Will.
Commissioners, good morning. Your planning manager, Will Groves. In coordination with legal counsel, I was asked to remind you that you will likely be hearing a future land use application on the landfill and taking testimony that relates to habitat concerns at this point may represent ex parte contacts. So you might want to, it'd be good to be aware that this type of information exists, but you'd likely want to capture it in the record at such time an application is made.
Just to know that the education process is happening as part of that future landfill application.
And certainly there's ways to cure this, to the
Yeah.
extent that as you come in the
Interesting.
application, you can acknowledge that you received this presentation and that it was, and it's available for video review, and you're hereby incorporating those information in the record. And we just have to make sure we make the link.
Yep.
So that you're not hearing testimony outside of the formal process that might affect your decision-making.
If you can remember to remind us to.
There we go.
I'd be happy.
He was ready.
Since I was the one who asked the questions, I'd be happy to try to cure
Yeah.
that
Glad to
later
help.
on.
Thank you.
What about coyotes and wolves? Is that a mouthful for a coyote?
Yeah, I mean, certainly coyote.
As a predator, right?
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
predator.
certainly coyotes and red fox. I guess a wolf probably wouldn't pass up a sage grouse nest if it came across it. I don't know that any of our colleagues have had that distinguished credit yet to be able to document that. But certainly coyotes have their share of nests. And as long as they are in sort of their natural, realm of abundance, it's just part of the
Yeah,
process.
but I mean, just as a predator, is that a
For
is that a
sure.
big part of it? That's what I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
wondering.
no, they certainly are, and they'll, they'll get the, what often happens, you have those adult hens with their young chicks, and they will do everything they can to defend the chicks, and it often costs them their life.
Mhm.
So whether it's an eagle, whether it's a coyote, and often loses.
Good.
Back
I mean-
to Commissioner Adair's question about Highway 20. When we're looking at the actual LEC locations, I was going to try to pull up my slideshow again, but you could see that adjacent to Highway 20, we have some historical LEC locations that were just a few miles or maybe within a mile of the highway. They have not had birds in over 20 or potentially 30 years. So that impact is seen on those LEC locations themselves. And then when we're looking at movement data, Christian would be able to speak to this, but I don't know that they've documented, even though the Brothers Pack is north and south of Highway 20, I don't know that they've documented movement across the highway.
I don't think we've had chickens cross the road yet.
Oh,
No, it's not, I mean, I was wondering, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
'Cause there's-
enough of a
they know
feature.
This
Yep,
is not where we want to go.
exactly. It's enough of a disturbance that they steer clear.
Oh, okay.
One
Thank
other
you.
thing I wanted to ask about. So I know that the group that used to be called the East Cascades Audubon is involved in habitat restoration work in the Brothers Pack area. How I've seen some of their sites, and it's pretty amazing what they are able to accomplish in terms of change of vegetation composition, in those sites. I don't have a good sense yet whether the work they're doing is, at scale enough to actually have an impact on populations. But do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
I'm not super familiar with all the details of their work. I mean, I think it's always good. Yeah, it's always good to have restoration tools and techniques in your back pocket. I guess it was my understanding that there was a lot of sort of handheld watering going on, which I just don't know how realistic that is in the context of post-fire BLM, Forest Service, these sorts of things. I think Skylar's pictures of the Brothers Pack this year shows what that place is capable of, right? I mean, we all walked out there in
Great.
2022. I'd be the first one, if I didn't know any different, I'd say, oh my goodness, we got to do something because this place looks horrible. Fast forward 3 years with no touch of doing anything, it's totally come on. So, I guess the question is you spend, when and where do you do that kind of work?
Mhm.
And yeah, I feel like really, given the unique nature of those soils, I mean, that's one thing I meant to mention to Skylar is that when he was out there, he should have grabbed a handful of the soil and we would have put a cup of water on the table and we would have dropped the soil, and because it's all pumice. And all those, I mean, it's dirt that floats. It's just incredible, which keeps the cheatgrass out. Right? It's well drained and so on and so forth. Like cheatgrass is very difficult to take hold there.
Hmm.
So anyway, I guess my point is that there is a time and a place for restoration. And I guess the story is still unfolding as to what is really needed in the Brothers area. I think this year is telling a very different story.
Yeah, this is one of the pieces that we were hoping to learn from Christian's project. And, we have all of these potential causes for declines in the Brothers Pack and the Paulina Pack. And using the birds to tell us what is actually happening out there is what we're hoping to get out of this.
well, great. Thank you very much. Great update. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
It's good to have this relationship for who's doing the science on this topic.
And thank you for presenting a story that you didn't think was going to be happening. So that's really a fascinating, hearing about the mother taking her baby a long ways away and they did it. So they survived it.
Thank you all.
No, thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 14 is first and second reading of adoption of ordinance regarding housing text, clear and objective housing text amendments.
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, Tarek Rawlings, Senior Transportation Planner with the Community Development Department and the Road Department. And just as was noted just a moment ago, today is before you is consideration of first and second reading and adoption by emergency of ordinance 2025-008 regarding the clear and objective housing text amendments specific to Title 17, the subdivision ordinance. This follows the public hearing deliberations process before the board on May 28th. And the Title 12 update process that took place on June 11th and is scheduled in line with this same ordinance here. So with that, there's some recommended motions. Following the first and second reading recommendation and the adoption by emergency recommendation, it would require a unanimous vote. The first motion, recommended motion, would be to move approval of first and second reading of ordinance 2025-008 by title only. Looks like the ordinance is on page 172 of your packet. And then the second recommended motion would be to move adoption of ordinance 2025-008 by emergency to take effect immediately today, June 25th, 2025. With that, I'm available for any questions you might have.
Yes, we have been through the process here, and this is clear and objective. This was a whole big project getting to this point, and then just aligning. So just acknowledging declaring an emergency as aligning dates of adoption.
So I'll move approval of first and second reading of ordinance number 2025-008 by title only.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. So at this time, ordinance number 2025-008, first reading, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 17 Subdivisions Ordinance and Title 22 Deschutes County Development Procedures Ordinance to include clear and objective housing standards in compliance with the state law and declaring an emergency. This will be second reading, ordinance number 2025-008, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 17 Subdivisions Ordinance and Title 22 Deschutes County Development Procedures Ordinance to incorporate clear and objective housing standards in compliance with state law and declaring an emergency.
At this time, I can move adoption of ordinance number 2025-008 by emergency to take effect immediately.
And I'll second the motion.
Any other discussion? Which is one of the big parts of the big project here that, let's say, legislatively defined. So I'm glad we're completing this step. Anything else? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Adair,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
5 days to spare, Tarek. Fabulous.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I know. Thank you.
Item number 15, consideration of first reading, an ordinance reconsidering Deschutes County 2040 Comprehensive Plan.
Good morning, Commissioners. Once again, I'm Nicole Mardell, Senior Planner with Deschutes County Planning. I'm here today to present ordinance number 2025-007 to the board for consideration of first reading. This is related to reconsideration of the Deschutes County 2040 Comprehensive Plan update. On June 11th, the board voted 2-1 to approve amendments to the Deschutes County 2040 plan, again on reconsideration from the Land Use Board of Appeals. Those amendments specifically being deletion of policies 9.2 and 9.3, reverting policies 9.2.1 to 9.3.15 to the original language from the 2011 comprehensive plan, and updating the narrative in Chapter 3 to include both the number of acres of EFU zoned land in Deschutes County, and the number of acres rezoned from EFU to other zones in the last 12 years, as well as the number of those currently under review. That narrative changes on page 3-2 specifically. Wanted to note that as this decision is on reconsideration from the Land Use Board of Appeals, the decision is due to LUBA by September 8th. So staff recommends the board move to conduct first reading of ordinance 2025-007 by title only.
Thank you very much. This is, basically republishing by ordinance from this reconsideration process. And I want to thank everybody who's been involved with this. I know there's differences in decisions here. I'm very comfortable with where we're at with the big picture. One of the things that jump out to me is just that, safety valve or, just having the historical negotiating opportunities in the comprehensive plan in context of Deschutes County and the development pressure as we see it. And being very prudent about any future, land use actions that do come across our desks.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. Thank you for all your work. And the fact that Deschutes County is, almost a touch under 2 million acres. And the fact that of those 250,000 acres are EFU private. So, and then there's some public ones too. So anyway, I just thought that was such an important point to have in this document. It's just some numbers. So can I make the motion then to have first reading of ordinance number 2025-007 by title only?
And I will second it. Yep, I will second it. So any other discussion?
I will just say that this reconsideration process has still not resulted in a comprehensive plan that effectively addresses the concern of large scale and numerous rezones and the cumulative impacts that those have on farm and forest land, water resources, habitat, the rural character of the county, et cetera. And so that's why I'll be voting no.
Okay, it's been motion and seconded. Anything else? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
No.
And Chair will vote yes. So this is first reading of ordinance number 2025-007 and ordinance superseding ordinance number 2024-007. It's the same number.
Yes.
Yeah.
Last year was 2024-007.
Oh, yep. Okay, there you go. That's why, yeah, there we are. So superseding ordinance 2024-007 and amending title 23, the Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan to incorporate revisions resulting from the Deschutes County 2024 update process. Second reading in about 3 weeks or almost a month, I guess.
So, yes, I'll return to the board for second reading tentatively July 23rd or perhaps the following week. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Item number 16, second reading of ordinance number 2025-010.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Nathaniel Miller with the Community Development Department. The item before us today is the second reading for the ordinance approving the plan amendment and zone change for the Bend Park and Recreation District property down off Arnold Market Road. For reference, the file numbers 247-24-000-404 PA and 405ZC. In your packet is a draft ordinance of 2025-010 with exhibits. These materials have been reviewed by planning staff, legal counsel. Today's meeting is the second reading, and if approved, this ordinance will become effective 90 days from today's date. Staff is available for any questions. If there are not any questions, the board may move to approve the ordinance as written. There is a recommended motion in your agenda packet.
So second reading.
So I move approval of second reading of ordinance number 2025-010 by title only.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Chair will vote yes. So this is the second reading, ordinance number 2025-010, An ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 23, the Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan, to change the comprehensive plan map designation for certain property from agriculture and surface mining to rural residential exception area, and amending Deschutes County Code Title 18, the Deschutes County zoning map, to change the zone designation for certain property from exclusive farm use and surface mining to rural residential.
And now I will move adoption of ordinance number 2025-010.
And I'll second that.
Any other discussion?
I guess I'd like to just say that I really appreciate that the Benton Park and Rec District laid out a clear vision of how they were going to be using this land so that, you know, I could feel comfortable that this rezone application would produce certain kinds of outcomes on the landscape.
Calling for the vote, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. Thank you very much.
Commissioners, we'll go ahead and send notice of decision.
Thank you.
Item number 17, public hearing to consider rate adjustments for garbage and recycling services.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Tim Brownell, Director of Solid Waste Department. So before you is a public hearing to consider a rate adjustment for wilderness garbage and recycling, Cascade Disposal, Bend Garbage and Recycling, and High Country Disposal, along with Deschutes Transfer. The recommended motion is to hold a public hearing and thereafter consider approval of Board Order 2025-2025 to provide a 3% rate adjustment for residential curbside waste and recycling collection services provided to residents in unincorporated Deschutes County, both by Cascade Disposal and Republic Services, with a 4.7% increase for all the services they provide. Susan Baker, who's our manager of franchise services, is handing you the schedule of fees with the application of those percentage increases. If you'd like some of the background, I'll give that to you before the public hearing.
Sure. Yeah, this will be for anybody following the topic.
So before you is a rate increase that had been asked for by the haulers. For your consideration to or understanding is that the county in this next budget cycle, starting July 1st, our tip fees are going up from $80 a ton to $90 a ton as approved within the budget. That represents an impact of approximately 3% on the ratepayers in their refuse collection services. So what you're seeing from Cascade Disposal is particularly a pass-through request for that increase. Republic Services is asking for roughly 1.7% above that. One thing I do want to point out is Republic Services has 3 separate hauling companies or hauling franchises that they've acquired over the last decade or so. That's Wilderness Disposal, Bend Garbage, and High Country. All 3 of those had slightly different rates. In this rate request, what we're doing is providing a consistent rate for Republic Services Distant Rural as well as Republic Services Rural. So what they've done is applied a 4.7% increase on the lowest disposal costs that they had in each category. So the effective impact of that increase on the ratepayers will be at most 4.7%, but on some of the commercial customers and distant rural customers, that rate will actually be effectively lower, closer to 2.5% to 3.5%. So I just wanted to point that out. In the future, this will help kind of establish consistent rates throughout the county for all of their their services provided. The additional piece on this rate request is that based from advice from county legal, we are aware that there are other service fees for services provided. If there's garbage outside a can, for example, there is a fee. Previously in our rate approval process, we did not include that, but since there is a franchise fee assessed for all revenues generated, it was the advice of county legal that we have an approval for all rates that are charged by the franchise haulers. So those are included within this rate attachment sheet as well. And those will continue to be approved on a go-forward basis, and any increase request, if it's done on a percentage basis, will all be impacted accordingly. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Looks like there's no questions at this time.
Pretty straightforward.
There you go. So this is a public hearing on the matter for rate adjustments for garbage and recycling services as a package and as presented by our solid waste director. Is there anyone in the room to testify on this matter? Is there anyone remote with a raised hand feature asking to testify? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on this matter. And so as I say, this is, transfer of the fiscal year. July 1st is the big moment. So this is the partnership with our franchise haulers, big picture. And thank you for the introduction to the different aspects of what we're talking about here. Any other thoughts or discussions?
I know my bill came in and it looked like it doubled, but now they're doing, what is it, bi-monthly billing? So, yeah, I was like, oh.
What?
I was like, what is this?
So the tip fee itself, going from $80 to $90, as I say, years ago, talking to people nationally, they were just blown away that we were way below $100. We were way below. Now we're getting closer, but still, the cost effectiveness of our solid waste system is just astounding, and the partnerships of the haulers out there too. So we should all be celebrating that. And as I say, big picture, looking for the next location for the next 100 years also. So with that, is there a motion?
I'll move approval of board order number 2025-025 to provide for a 3% rate adjustment for residential curbside waste and recyclables collection services provided to residents in unincorporated Deschutes County Cascade Disposal, and a 4.7% increase for Republic Services, including Wilderness Disposal, Bend Garbage and Recycling, High Country Disposal, and Deschutes Transfer Company.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? So just filling in on that tip fee, when you say $80 to $90, that's that yard, is it cubic yard? Is that what it is?
No, it's per ton.
Per ton, okay, ton, yep. But that's the foundation, that number, and then everything gets back calculated from there. That's what I'm referring to.
So a ton is still 2,000 pounds, right? Okay.
A US ton.
Okay. All right. Just wanted
Good clarity.
to be sure we all knew that.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes.
Very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the partnerships, everyone. Item number 18, approval of board order canceling uncollectible personal property taxes. Oh, look at the crew here.
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Tintle, Chief Financial Officer and Tax Collector.
Accounting technician.
Judy Haas, Deputy Tax Collector.
Morning. We are here today to talk about canceling uncollectible property taxes of $247,298.22. This is an annual process that we usually go through. However, because the amount is a bit larger than it typically is historically, so we are bringing this item forward to you today. A little bit of background. Property Personal property taxes are considered to be uncollectible when the cost of the collection exceeds the amount of the tax, or when it is no longer feasible or reasonable to pursue the collection. The county's procedure is to cancel uncollectible personal property tax accounts once every year, as mentioned. The last cancellation was approved by the board last year on June 26, 2024, in the amount of $40,632. In your materials that you have before you, we did include a history of the property tax, personal property tax write-off that we have. This year's amount represents 1.42% of the total of the personal and manufactured structures taxes levied for 24-25, which that amount was $15,659,000. And with that, we'll open it up for discussion and questions.
Well, I've been through this before. The number is bigger this year. And there's the backup, the kind of the spreadsheet itself talking about the businesses or the different accounts that are going to be deemed non-collectible.
So we actually had not done the businesses then since 2013. Is that why we're looking at almost $250,000 on that schedule? It goes back to 2014. There's $2,900 from that year, and so we just accumulated them. And
I'll defer part of it. We do this annually, as mentioned. However, not every account is written off in that year. If we still have a chance of collecting, or we're still trying to research and get a hold of the customers, then we're still working on that year after year. But at the point where it is determined that it is no longer uncollectible because of bankruptcy, out of business, death, or various reasons, that's at the point when we write it off at that point. And if there's any additional information, I encourage that.
Thanks for providing all this background information, to see how many accounts and how much. I guess I'm still curious, if looking at this spreadsheet, are there themes, or, is there a, kind of a unique story to tell for this year that kind of describes or explains, why the large amount this year?
For the large amount is because a lot of businesses have been on
Oh.
here forever. Some as far back as 2014. And we do due diligence to go and make phone calls, email, send out registered mail or whatever. We don't hear back, and they stay on the roll because the assessor's office will continue to assess them. And now that some of them are no longer being assessed, and I'm going to be moving on because I'm not going to be here after September 30th.
is that your date?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
I was wondering.
Yeah.
Clean up a mess.
Way to
with-
go.
There you go.
filling in for me With Renee. the
I
number-
see. Yeah. Well, and some of these are depreciated capital assets also, so that the value kind of goes down over time for businesses that have capital like that. And it would naturally, reduce in value or reduce in assessed value. But yeah, these maybe are failed businesses or people that just moved on, or just like you mentioned, somebody passed away possibly, and it's just a loose end.
Mhm, that's correct. With the cost of postage going up too every single year, just gets more expensive.
And then by doing this, we're representing all tax districts too. So that's the other aspect of this. This is the taxable foundation of the Deschutes County. And this is when we say collectible rate every year in our numbers, this is that last little bit that's just not going to get collected.
So I'm looking at the schedule, and 23 actually comes up to a total of 111,000 plus. Do you think those are businesses that closed because of COVID? Is that what we're looking at here? I know, like, one of my favorite was actually from 23. 23 was Tuesday Morning, and I know they've been gone for a while. They only were in 1 year's account for 23, but yes, a lot of those businesses, I'm just wondering if that's what happened, Right. And so we had to write that off, that $449. So, but that is on this schedule, that's the biggest number for all those years. And so, COVID started in 2020, and remember how people couldn't be open, they could only be open so many hours, and all those other things that businesses were going through, and it just seems like it was pretty impactful for, eventually it gets to your bottom line and you just can't keep going on.
And anyone listed in the 2024 column is no longer in business. Those ones in the 2024 are no longer in business. We should also note that even if these are deemed as uncollectible at this point, a lien still stays on the account through the clerk's office. So for some reason, if the business is resurrected or it tries to sell, that lien is still there and we would collect at that point. But at this point, it's determined uncollectible, but the lien stays on with. the
Forever
clerk's
or
office.
for 10 years or?
The warrant is issued in the clerk's office and it stays on there, and then we put the taxes back on it.
I don't know if it goes off in 10 years, so we've never had to reapply it, so I'm not sure. We have to check with the clerk.
Okay.
And so connecting to the story of, these are the we're doing cleanup on businesses since 2014. I see that in 2012, 2013, that was the other year where we got into six figures. So was that also a big cleanup year, basically where we did sort of the same thing and went back a number of years and just tidied up the
I'm sorry, I don't have the 2016 in front of me. It could be one count was huge that year. I cannot.
I think every year they look at them. So if there's somebody's continuing to pay or we're thinking there's still a possibility, we can get something from them with garnishments or whatever. And usually those accounts, we don't really put them on here until they're out of business or just not able to. So we've been collecting, maybe they've been paying smaller amounts and then for some reason they just quit. So there's different circumstances with every single one of them. But this one, there's like probably 3 or 4 or 5 that are larger amounts than we normally would have. So.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, maybe I may not have been totally clear. I'm looking at the list of summary of prior cancellations by tax year, and the 2012 to 2013 year that was 136,000, and all these other years are significantly less. So I was just wondering if 2012, 2013 was the most recent big cleanup year that we did.
I would think maybe the economy had a big impact on that because that's after the
2000
years after
Yeah.
the recession.
Yes.
2008, we give it a few years trying to collect and then at some point you just have to give up.
Is there a motion?
I move approval of board order number 2025-023, canceling uncollectible personal property taxes of $247,298.22.
Second.
Any other discussion?
I just want to thank Connie for her service to Deschutes County. It is appreciated. I know we'll have to have some special ceremony for you in September. So what is your actual last day then? Okay, great.
Congratulations.
You're with us for a little longer, and thank you to the whole team that helps. Every year during budget time, we look at an estimate of what we think our tax collection rate is going to be. And I know that you all are on the front line of actually making that tax collection rate real. And it's very helpful for the finances of the county and for us to be able to do as much as we can in terms of providing services to the community with the tax dollars collected. So thank you.
So calling for the vote, Commissioner Adair.
Yes.
Commissioner Chang.
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item number 19, Measure 110, Behavioral Health Resource Network Grant Funding. Welcome. Hello. Mm-hmm.
Context is in November of 2020, Oregon voters passed Measure 110, the Drug Addiction Treatment Recovery Act of 2020. The goal of Measure 110 is to establish equitable and effective substance use services through the burn. In 2022, we came to the VOCC and requested to apply for burn funding services totaling $2,890,000, around that amount. In 2024, there was an amendment to that, and approving extending us through June 30th of 2025 and increasing the maximum funding to $5,170,120. With that funding and during the 34-month period, Deschutes County provided peer support, mentoring services, recovery services for adults, youth, and our adult intensive and unhoused populations, burial removals, harm reduction services and supplies, and shelter beds. In August 2025, we came back to you and we requested to apply for $11.5 million. And this would extend us from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th of 2029. This funding would have allowed us to maintain 13.3 existing full-time staff, support 2 additional staff providing mobile treatment services, and to purchase a vehicle for outreach to our South County hub area. Unfortunately,
Put the mic closer. Yeah, I got a notification from them. Well, just put a little bit closer, just for the room. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just slide it towards you. That's what I was thinking. There you go. That's what we were thinking.
unfortunately, we were only awarded 58% of that 11.5 million, receiving $6,650,000. With that reduction in funds, we're not able to maintain our current service levels. Based on that, we made the difficult decision to reduce harm reduction services levels over the course of the next 13 months. In that time, we'll work with our community partners and in an effort to mitigate that loss and really support the people in our community. So we're seeking approval today to accept the IGA for the $6,650,000. The breakdown of that is $6,005,535 to support 12.81 FTE for year one, and then we'll reduce that to 10.81 FTE for years 2 through 4. $10,000 for harm reduction supplies for year one, $29,921 for cell phone office supplies and mileage reimbursement, and then the remaining $604,544 for the 10% administrative indirect costs. With that, we'll open it up.
I'm just curious, like looking at the amount we applied for and the amount we were awarded, is this, was this cycle, was there just less total money available? Was there a lot of competition?
Yes and yes. So for the record, Holly Harris, Interim Health Services Director. So yes, there was less money to go around. It was also for a longer period of time. But I also would be remiss if I didn't talk about the process by which this money was allocated. It was significantly flawed, in my opinion. The Oversight and Accountability Council was in charge of allocating the dollars. It was an inconsistent process at best. And there was an award made originally in which we had taken about a $2 million hit, and then they went back because many community mental health programs across the state didn't get any funding at all. And there seemed to be a bit of a bias against community mental health programs receiving this funding. So there was a lot of discussion. The Oversight and Accountability Council went back, reevaluated how that money was distributed. Many CMHPs across the state then did get some money. We unfortunately took an additional $2 million.
Right. Yeah, we were going the
So
wrong way.
It was all over the place. We were up and down. We don't understand the process. It didn't feel like traditional procurement processes were followed. However, as a result of all of that, Senate Bill 610, as you know, went through the legislature and has now removed that responsibility from the Oversight and Accountability Council, and it will now be with the Oregon Health Authority. So my hope is going forward, there'll be a more consistent and reliable process for how these large amounts of funds are allocated across the state for this important work. But unfortunately, we're stuck with the decision as it stands now for the next 4 years.
And Holly, you saw that our LGAC meeting is now, the combined meeting for June and July is July 11th. So I'm hoping that perhaps public comment could be made at that meeting.
That would be good.
Yes, yes. Yeah. You can't make it up.
So committing to 4 years, what's the revenue look like? As in, there's reoccurring pool of funds that's gonna, yeah, where does Measure 110 money come from? I'm trying to remember.
That's a good question. I mean, this was the money that was allocated as a result of the passage of Measure 110, so I don't know if it's general.
Is it
fund,
marijuana tax money or
tax
something else?
dollars. It's a
My
total-
point is there's probably reoccurring revenue somewhere. This is a 4-year commitment, so I can just see 2 years from now, it's probably going to be, well, now we're going to change this and here's more revenue or something. I don't know exactly what. But
That has been a little bit my experience with with the Behavioral
Yeah.
Health Resource Network dollars. They and the grant in general, there's been a bit of inconsistency over time. I'm hoping that for the next 4 years we may have stabilized a bit. And especially now with, the change to OHA, I'm hoping to see a bit more consistency. But yes, we never.
I can just
fully know.
assume, yeah, 2 years from now, there'll be some big old variable in there, but who knows what exactly? That's all I'm saying.
No, but did you hear that when Rite Aid closes at the south end, when Rite Aid, that Oregon will now be the last state in the nation with pharmacies? I think we were 49th now. Alaska was worse, but now we will be at the bottom. And think how impactful that is for all of our communities trying to get their prescriptions filled. So, yeah. It's, it's like something different has to happen.
So you've laid out what we'll be able to do with this allocation, but how much are we scaling back from our current BHRN funded efforts, to get to this place? I mean,
So our biggest hit was to our harm reduction program. And that is a massive loss for us, for the community. There's no way to kind of talk around that. This amount of loss of funding, there was no way to sustain that program fully. The good news is that we have had community partners already that have offered, Best Care being one of them, offered to step up and help increase their harm reduction activities in order to offset some of the losses that we might be experiencing from the loss of our program. We are also thankful that we have the next 13 months. We don't have to end this overnight and have it just be a complete loss. We're going to work for the next 13 months with our community partners, with our public health department, with other grassroots organizations to try and build them up to be able to provide these services. But there will be, it will not be what we were providing.
yeah. And I mean, at the grimmest level, I mean, this could be reflected in overdose death rates.
Yeah, I mean, this was a life-saving program. The amount we're gonna do everything we can to continue naloxone distribution, both within health services and outside of health services. That's a key commitment that we have. Syringe exchange. There's other opportunities from community partners that can lift up that service. But the amount of outreach and events and things that we were able to do with the burn dollars allowed people to have access to those services in a way that won't be able to be accessed in the future the same way.
But you're only allocating $10,000 when this comes into effect.
What's the 2 FTE though?
Yeah.
What?
But
No, I'm talking about the funds for harm reduction supplies.
that's what we have for the first year. So we can't allocate. That's for the harm reduction program for year one. That's the amount of supplies that we'll have for the 13 months while we transition it elsewhere. Other community, Best Care is a burn provider. They were also awarded burn dollars, and they have supply dollars, and they have, other dollars within their budget to help lift up their harm reduction efforts. And we also have the clearinghouse, which we depend heavily on to purchase or to receive naloxone. So, and within the health services budget, outside of burn dollars, we have a commitment to ensure that we continue naloxone distribution. So we will use reserves, we will use other dollars that we have available to us that are allowed to be used for that purpose.
So do we have an overdose number to date?
Not have that off the top of my head, but I can certainly provide.
I mean, I believe last year was higher than the prior year by 1 or 2. So
I think I sent you some data on that recently, and it's difficult because we have to wait for the
I know
report and
that it takes,
verifying, and it takes time.
I know it takes months, but I just wondered where we were at.
I could do a double check.
Looks like she may have. Yeah.
Was 29, and 2024 was 154. So those were the reversals that we had due to the naloxone distribution.
But I was asking about the actual overdoses, deaths.
I don't have. that.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I'm supportive of this plan. We were warned a few years ago that fentanyl is going to get worse before it gets better. Hopefully, we're managing, absolutely stopping people from dying from overdose at all opportunities. Harm reduction can be a little kind of controversial. I mean, just like you were saying, it's just one of those interesting dynamics, like we're doing what for who? So, but let's keep communicating on this and, as I say, the big picture back to the burn funding itself, it'll be interesting to see how it evolves over the next few years.
Thank you. And I do just want to take a minute to thank our harm reduction staff who have worked tirelessly for this last several years, putting on events and saving lives, quite frankly. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that.
If I could ask one more question about that, I mean, are there places for those harm reduction staff in the behavioral health team elsewhere, or with some of these community partners that are trying to step up to fill that gap in service? Are we basically talking about, elimination of positions right now?
So through the county union agreements and processes, we have recall rights as their positions end in 13 months. And so if there are positions that they want and that they're eligible for, there's a process for keeping them employed if they so choose. So there's a whole process around that, but there's also opportunities within the community with community partners. So these are well-respected, very talented staff that I will, be doing everything I can for.
Yeah, that workshop that they put on the other day was great.
Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of chair's signature of document number 2025-638 in Oregon Health Authority Measure 110 BHRN grant agreement.
And I'll second it. And congratulations on the funding for the 3 million for the child's facility. So, yes. Yeah.
We're very excited about that.
That is incredibly important for all of this side of the mountain for kids. So I was very happy to see that.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes. Thank you.
So that's truly a celebration for our community, that facility being done as soon as it's possible.
You're poised and ready to go. So we will be moving as quickly as possible.
Does this funding allocation mean that, Jackson's House is ready to go?
We have to work through those processes to determine a provider, whether or not it's an RFP or whether direct allocation. So we'll kind of work through those details with obviously our legal department and others. But the work has been done. The partnerships are there. The money is now there. So there is no reason other than to move forward.
Thank you.
Excellent news.
Item number 20, update on Deschutes County Wolf Committee vacant position. Getting down there in the agenda now.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager. I'm just here to provide a quick update. Back at the end of May, we had an open position on our Wolf Committee. As I've talked about before, but I'll just give a quick background on the Wolf Committee is made up of 7 members. The designation of those members comes from Oregon Department of Agriculture, who administers or who provides the grant funding for the committee. And those positions are 1 county commissioner, 2 owners or managers or producers of livestock, 2 business representatives, and then 2 supporters or people who support coexistence with wolves. So the one position that became open at the end of the May is for the supporter and coexistence with wolves position. We opened up the application for a 3-week process. That application closed on Monday. I just got the applications about an hour and a half ago. So I've done a very quick high-level scan of those. So we received 5 applications. So I'm proposing that the applications get reviewed, and upon qualification of the applications for the particular position listed, then suggest scheduling interviews in August in previous conversations, it has come up that potentially having current members of the Wolf Committee as part of that application interview and review process. I did get confirmation from 3 current members who are interested. 2 of them hold the position of owners or producers of livestock, which is Ethan O'Brien and Johnny Leeson. And then also Dr. Stephen Papa, who's a large vet animal, has also committed to doing the applications if the commissioners would like to go forward. Sorry, Dr. Papa holds a position of a business owner representative. So with that being said, I'm just going to pause to see kind of what your interest is in the process. Previously, I reviewed the applications and then put them, at that time we were interviewing for almost all of the Wolf positions. So I put them into piles of kind of where they were qualified in those positions, and then weeded out applications who weren't necessarily qualified for the position they were holding. In some cases, I contacted them to see if they wanted another position. So I could do that again in this and then give them to you. What we did last time was rate them, but we had well over 70 applications. So I could do the initial review, make sure that everyone who applied is qualified for the position, and then turn it over to the commissioners, and we could interview all who are qualified or any other process that you are interested in pursuing.
So it's time for us to kind of put direction to this. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thoughts?
5 isn't a huge number. I mean, I think if Jen did an eligibility, kind of, do you meet the basic parameters? And checked, I'd be happy to do 5 interviews.
Yes, and it's representing the producers of Oregon. We just had 5 baby calves, I believe, killed in Umatilla County. I just spoke with Brian Thomas I believe yesterday. Anyway, yeah, 5 people to interview is we did it before.
And I'm thinking maybe I'll just stand by and not be interviewed. I'd like to see the papers, but let's maybe just have the other 2 commissioners interview. Just not to engage with the topic per se.
I know, because you don't have them in your neighborhood like I do. So,
Wolves?
yeah, my neighbor had them on his deck, 2 of them.
Well, as I say, I mean.
Yeah, it's a little dicey.
But it's just.
There is a breeding pair in the southwest corner of the county.
Okay, but yeah, I'd like to see the 5, just, the paper.
Yeah, I print them all
Yep,
out, so
yep.
I'll drop them off with everyone so you can have them. If you want them electronically, I can send that along. And then, so it sounds like at least 2 commissioners want to do the review and interview process. Are you interested in also bringing in members of the Wolf Committee to do that process? And if so, would you like them to be separate interviewers, potentially looking for an odd number for voting purposes, or we could pair them with commissioners as well?
Well,
So
as I
there's
say,
that
and I was just kind of thinking, not being involved, but maybe I need to be involved, so we're on the same
So we
odd
actually
number
have
situation, or.
3 people from the committee that want to be part of the interviewing process. Is that what you said?
We do, yes.
So Commissioner DeBonne, you might have to step up.
Well, as I say, I was trying to reduce the complexity, but maybe I just made it more complicated. That
Yeah.
wasn't my intention.
We did it I'll just refresh last time. We just kind of did a round robin. So last time, staff was paired with each commissioner, all 3 commissioners interviewed. And we did, I think, a 1 hour round robin, and we did the interviews in each of your offices, and they kind of just moved around. So we, it can be with 5 people. If we have 5 qualified candidates, we could do that within an hour and a half.
Yeah, and I enjoyed talking to everybody and interviewing, and
I just wanted to put in a plug for the members of the committee who are willing to participate in the interviews. This is a group that has helped Deschutes County navigate a really complicated and contentious issue in this last year, and produce for the community funds to compensate people for losses, producers for losses, and to also help prevent future depredations. So the folks on the committee have been through that process. They know what it takes to find agreements among these really different perspectives on the committee to help move the county forward, and not to fan the flames of controversy and hostility.
You mean like when 5 calves are killed, and by you know, the economic repercussions of that with beef being at the lowest inventory, I believe, since the 1970s.
Yeah.
It's clearly impactful to cattle herds, and I think they are maybe our second leading agricultural product in the state. So
Yeah.
number two.
And this committee delivered in that portion of, in that region of Deschutes County, not from the wolf that killed those all those calves in Lake County, but they delivered for Deschutes County producers compensation for all the losses that Deschutes County producers had experienced, and tens of thousands of dollars of prevention funds that will hopefully reduce the likelihood that there's going to be depredations on Deschutes County producers in the future.
Where do those reimbursement and depredation funds come from?
It came from the state. I believe they just did have a bill, Senate Bill 777, which has maybe $1 million attached to it, or that million came from somewhere else because I'd read
The
less.
general fund of the state itself.
Yeah.
There's also
It's a
there's also a portion that comes from the federal government through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
So, I mean, if there's three of the committee members that want to partner up, I'll partner up and we'll be 3 and 3 with 2, you know. I was thinking of trying to reduce it, but I guess that wasn't going to work.
So I'll look to schedule that in August. I know July is kind of booked up, so I'll look to schedule those interviews in August so we can get an appointment in before the next Wolf Committee, which will be in mid-September. And then would you like to just review all 5 applications, or do you want me to do initial review and qualification spec of the applications and then submit any that are applicable?
If you could just screen out anyone who's not eligible before we look at them, I think that I would appreciate that.
I support that.
Okay. That's all I need for this one. Thank you.
And that, yeah, I mean, I'd like to see all 5 names, but you can show who's qualified or not.
Great, we'll do.
Good, thank you. And thanks for the people that thanks for the folks that are starting in this process with us. Item number 21, update on district map process.
Steve will be joining us, so I'll wait for him to come up. Great. I'll kick us off, but I'll let Steve introduce himself first.
Good morning, Steve Dennison, County Clerk.
And Jen Pedersen, Strategic Initiatives Manager. So we're just here to provide a brief high-level overview, and then we can get into any details if the commissioners so choose. So just as an update, this is an update on the district maps process. So just a quick background for those who may be watching for the first time. There's going to be 2 new positions per a ballot measure last year, November 2024. So the board is going to expand to a 5-commissioner board. There's been several discussions between November and May from the commissioners about potentially having district maps instead of 5 at-large seats that will not apply for the 2 new positions and the 2 positions up for reelection come May, but it would be following that. And there was a majority board in favor of drawing draft district maps for board consideration to be put on the May 2026 ballot. So I'm just giving a high-level update on that process and where we stand right now. So we have internally, staff has developed a working group that consists of Nick Lelak, County Administrator, Steve Dennison, County Clerk, myself, Lee Klemp from IT, who provides GIS support, as well as 2 community members, Nancy Blankenship, hopefully I pronounced her last name correctly. She's former Deschutes County Clerk, as well as Neil Bryant, former state senator representing the area. So that is our internal working group. We are meeting every other Tuesday for about an hour, kind of trying to flesh out the process about how the committee, about the group work that the committee will actually do. So where we stand in that process is we're in the, our next meeting is going to be next Tuesday. We're in the process of drafting guidelines, committee guidelines for the committee to follow and to give them direction through the committee process. We will bring that draft guideline before the board, probably end of July, maybe beginning of August, I think, just given the board's meeting schedule for your consideration. Sorry?
So don't forget the county fair.
We won't schedule.
Right there.
There's a lot going on. This summer is going to be over before we know it. So we'll be providing that draft guideline for your consideration and input in the near future. Additionally, the board has previously discussed having a facilitator, an outside facilitator for these committee meetings. Neil Bryant has graciously stepped up and agreed to facilitation. I believe that has been brought to you during one-on-one meetings individually, and I believe the board is all in support of that. So we're in, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, just acknowledging, Neil Bryant, senator many years ago, very engaged. It's been quiet on the Neil Bryant front in my world for a few years, but I'm honored that he's popped up and he's willing to get engaged in this process. And then for all of us to be able to, this is the moment where we're acknowledging who's stepping up, what the structure may be on this. So it's making sure we're all on the same page.
And I want to put it into the record because I used to live in LA County. LA County, with over 10 million people, has 5 commissioners, supervisors for the entire LA County with 10 million plus people. And those districts have been there forever. And I just think, so what we're doing here with our districts, I think that's really incredible that we need to establish that historical perspective of what they've done in Los Angeles County with 10 million people. And you only have 5 supervisors.
Are you saying we shouldn't go from 5 to 7 to 12 to?
Well, I'm just saying if LA County has survived with 5 for a long time, that hopefully our districts will be fair and representative. I know I was in, Catherine Berger's district. Never thought about changing it and never heard about adding more commissioners there. So maybe it was discussed somewhere, but it definitely, I don't believe it was on the front page of the LA Times.
I would just say about Neil Bryant, I know Neil Bryant. I greatly respect Neil Bryant and his stature within the community. And so I really appreciate him stepping up. I would like to know whether he has facilitation experience before we sign a contract. I'm guessing he does. I mean, as a practicing attorney, you have to, if he's had to do mediations or he's had to do things like that, then I assume that is the case. But it'd be, just having the kind of reputation and kind of relationships within the community to serve as a neutral facilitator doesn't mean that you have all the hard skills too. And so if we could just double check that, that would be great.
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a great question. Thank you.
We'll look into that.
Because I mean, if he, if for some reason he didn't, we can complement that by having, staff help with facilitation, and he could serve more like a non-voting chair role, but, just want to clarify that.
Great. We'll look into that. And I would also say one of the benefits of having Neil and Nancy be part of the working group is going through the whole process. And they both bring a lot of experience and expertise to our working group table. And Neil's also bringing it from looking at it with the facilitator hat on as well. So I think that's helpful to have from the get-go on the process. But we'll, of course, reach out and ask for a specific experience there.
Well, and, Nancy Blankenship, previous county clerk, so running the election, it gives you the feel for, okay, this is the footprint of the county. This is the voters. These are the districts, the precincts. So yeah, we're working through districts, but precincts, understanding that just the voter base, and the voter base is growing right now too. So the one she left just a few years ago has changed a little bit, but just having her experience is an honor also.
And also her experience with the county charter effort that was undertaken back in 06 or so.
Yeah.
And working with the committee that was helping draw those district lines, different district lines, as of course, as you mentioned. Population has changed, but she's had that experience, so her knowledge is valued.
No, I think Neil and Nancy are very valued members of our community. And the important thing is this group needs to do a job that the voters will approve and vote for. So the better job they do, the better it is for all voting citizens of Deschutes County.
How many registered voters as of about today?
Roughly 162, 163,000.
Steve, one thing I'd like to clarify, the districts will be drawn based on total population, distribution of total population, not just registered voters. Is that correct?
I think that's one of the decisions that needs to be made either by the committee or by you.
Yeah, so that for further clarification, that was actually a large topic of our last meeting conversation. So those guidelines are being put into the draft charter, or I think we're calling committee guidelines right now, into the draft committee guidelines for your review. So ultimately, the commissioners will have the decision on kind of the guidance for the committee on that. And we didn't land on that question. Actually, Nancy had several feedback questions regarding voting blocks and when it was last updated and populations and that sort of thing. So we had some get backs for that particular conversation that we'll go back to. So that is going to be in the draft guidelines for the board consideration
so that's
before it goes to the committee.
And some stuff are going to be kind of black and white, the rules and regulations as they exist. Other things are to be decided.
And the board could ultimately also just decide that's a question for the committee to decide.
Well, you have to recommend. Yep.
So non-answer to that, but it's a topic of discussion and input from Nancy and Steve and several.
There are pros and cons to each way, to slice the districts up by population and the most recent census block data or by registered voters. But yeah, that will be part of that recommended guidelines.
I mean, I would just put out there that I think if we don't do it by total population, we're demonstrating bias against families because parents of minors who aren't voting age yet, like myself, still need to ensure that the community is providing services for their whole family. Another question that, that this may be something that we defer to the committee to resolve is the question of whether the committee will consider mixes of districted and at-large seats. I think that there is real value in considering having at least one at-large seat and mixed in with some districts so that we ensure that every geography of the community is represented, has representation on the Board of Commissioners, but also to address, I guess, what people would call parochial concerns. When we're at a point where one of the corners of the county says, well, that district has a clinic, a behavioral health clinic, so we want one too. And it's, we can't, have a discussion about, well, there's not necessarily the population base to support a clinic here, but the commissioner is saying, well, I don't care. That district has one, I want one too. It's valuable to have people who represent the county at large to balance that out.
So to that point, I'm currently operating under, I thought, per majority board guidelines to draw one draft map with 5 districts and not an at-large. I believe, and I would have to go back and pull the notes, at one of the prior meetings, 2 commissioners indicated support of one draft map with 5 districts.
I believe we did.
I don't recall a specific vote to that effect.
Well, so this is going to be guidance to the committee, correct? I mean, this is the starting point guidance to the committee. So, I mean, this is it. This is the vibrant discussion that we're going to have. So, I mean, throw it out there as an idea, and then we'll either, if we have to, vote on.
But we do need to
final
vote on it more
versions.
than once. That's a question.
Well, yeah,
It'll probably come down to in the draft guidelines that
That's
the
what I'm thinking.
commissioners want to give to the committee as a starting point. So currently operating in the draft guidelines as 5 districts, but I'm happy to put the other options in for commissioner discussion for the, ultimately the guidelines that are going to be given, approved, commissioner approved and given to the committee members.
So as I say, that'll be the more deliverable into the process to the committee that, if we're gonna, so we can keep talking about it. I mean,
Yeah, and so I mean, if we're gonna make decisions about either of these questions, by population or by registered voters, or 5 districts or 4 districts with 1 at-large seat, I would like those to be, if the board is going to decide those things, I would like us to memorialize that with specific votes, because those are really important questions.
So yeah, that'll be that guidance into the committee that will come around again in a couple weeks.
Okay, and so I'm currently hearing that putting several options in there for map drawing options into the draft guidelines.
Well,
At least considering that question, 1 in 4 or 5.
Well, so what I'm seeing here is, you're trying to draw some lines, you're trying to make sure you get your, ideas out there, and I support that. So let's work through this process. I mean, it could be a contentious moment where we vote 2-1 on and a part or piece of this, but let's do that. I don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, the people who will be living with these districts for many decades to come deserve to hear, to hear the thoughts on all sides and to watch a specific decision being made.
And it's going to be a package that's going to be voted on by the voters in the end.
Right.
So, I mean, but
if we're narrowing the scope of what the committee is even doing right from the start, then
you want it to be documented. We're sitting in a public meeting and we're doing that. Great.
The other working group work that we'll be undertaking once we get through the draft guidelines is kind of coming up with a format for the committee meetings of kind of this is how you do GIS and all of the kind of nuts and bolts of that, giving them an outline of kind of what that structure of the committee is going to look like. With that being said, we did establish kind of we have a suggested schedule for the committee. That schedule would be, and we're hoping to bring it before you now. So as you're having conversations with potential nominees, you can give people a better idea of kind of commitments and time. But we're looking to do 1 orientation committee meeting sometime in August. That will be a 2-hour meeting. We'll schedule in the evening time during the weekday. And then we're proposing weekly committee meetings every Tuesday in the evening times, beginning September 9th and going no later than November 19th. The meetings will be 2 hours each. They'll be facilitated with with intents of things to accomplish for each meeting. And then, those will be adjusted as the committee process goes through the process. If the committees may finish their business before November 19th, and so schedules will be adjusted accordingly, or if committee business is taking longer than expected, additional meetings may be scheduled in order to meet that November 19th deadline. We came up with the November 19th deadline going into the holiday season at the end of November and wanting to get the draft maps before the commissioners for potential approval of the maps and to go through that whole process and get them to the county clerks in time for the February deadline.
So September 9th to November 19th, that's about, 8 or 9 meetings possibly?
It was 8.
Yeah.
I don't have my calendar pulled up. We looked through, we did.
My first thought is that's a lot of meetings. Hopefully that's enough. I'm just thinking, wow, 8 weeks, that's a lot of talking, but yeah.
They could get the job done early.
They get it done early, then everyone gets to
And
finish early.
with the people that we're talking about helping facilitate, I really feel like it should be fairly obvious. I know in 2022 or 3, the largest feeder of Deschutes County was LA County, believe it or not. It was a couple years ago. I don't know who still provides that information here, but if someone's coming from LA County, they are clearly aware of districts.
U-Haul provides that information.
Yes, we'll find out from U-Haul then who was the biggest feeder here, but they were at one time, and it was a bit amazing.
And then just a few more details on the meetings. we're still in discussion, but I think one of the options on the table is rotating throughout the county. So, you know, depending on where the nominees come from, that, you know, making it fair, not always being right here, but, you know, trying to have a meeting in Redmond and Sisters and Lapine and different areas. I don't want to exclude anyone there, but, you know, trying to make it throughout the county. So there'll be that opportunity as well.
Jen, I think that's really an excellent idea to make it, you know.
I'm going to credit Whitney Hill for that one.
Yes, thank you, Whitney. No, I think it's great because tonight we actually have a sisters meeting. So that's, you know, we move some of our meetings around and I think it's important.
And that's all I have for the update. There are still a couple items if the board would like to have for discussion. Particularly, I think it was kind of left unsaid whether or not, we're looking, so in previous meetings, the majority of the board voted to do the committee nomination process on July 23rd at that BOCC meeting. And the question that's still on the table is whether or not those names will be provided ahead of that meeting, or are they going to be revealed at that
Unveiled,
meeting?
yeah.
Yes, and then a question that the working group also brought up is, would the board like to consider including alternates should a committee member need to leave the committee for any reason? And then what would that alternate look like if the board would like a committee member there?
I think that's a great idea too. Just, you know, if, such as myself, being able to appoint two people, but having a backup in case there was a problem, because you never know. And it's, you know, it's important to have balance in that group. So having an alternate too.
So would that look like each commissioner has an alternate, so that the commissioner who appointed the person who may have hypothetically has to leave the committee for whatever reason, that commissioner would be the one adding the alternate? So there would be 3 potential alternates. So that's one option on the table, or having an alternate voted on by the board as another option. And then the third question there, all these get into further questions, but the third question there would be, would you want the alternate to be alternates to be present at all the committee meetings, or they could go back and watch a recording potentially as well? So a few questions for consideration. The alternates doesn't necessarily have to be decided today. I think the bigger question, if the board wants to take it up, is whether or not the nominations should be provided to staff ahead of the meeting to be included in the agenda topic, or if it's going to be revealed during the meeting.
So I'm not coming in with a strong feeling for, you know, the July 23rd nomination. And I'm sure I'll have my thoughts. So really it would be, are we going to publish the names on the agenda, or kind of have that discussion real time at a board meeting? Thoughts?
Well, I'll go back to the requests I was making at the last meeting that we discussed this, to coordinate our selections, our appointments, so that we actually get, you know, complete geographic representation across Deschutes County, that we get a proportionate partisan representation on this committee. 55,000 people in Deschutes County are not, more than 55,000 people of our registered voters in Deschutes County are not Republicans or Democrats. And one other kind of thing that I think would be appropriate to think a little bit about the proportionality of as we compose this committee is like urban and rural representation. 70%, over 70% of the people in Deschutes County live in incorporated cities. So if we were to appoint a committee that was, predominantly people who were from out, the rural county, that would not be, it would not be reflective of the population of Deschutes County.
So yeah, I don't know that I'm going to work with a matrix of all the aspects that you're thinking of there. So I will provide 2 electors in the county. We did go down this path before, that are going to be engaged to serve all the people of Deschutes County in a fair fashion in a public meeting. So I mean, I'm not going to predetermine all that.
I guess, without coordinating in some way, it is impossible to ensure that we have complete geographic representation, for example. And so that's, I'll make a plug for that again. Alternatively, to go to this question of whether we're going to put names in the packet or do some kind of reveal on the fly during the meeting, that would be an opportunity to essentially do a little bit of coordination, is, you know, hearing who each other are putting out there, and you know, and I could come in with a list of 5 potentially, and, you know, pick the 3 that round out or balance out the, you know, the committee based on what I hear the 2 of you putting out there.
So I don't mind putting it on paper at some point and sharing it with staff. So, I mean, there could be an opportunity for people to see the names as, you know, right days before we publish an agenda. So, you know, I don't know,
Pulling up the,
make sure that we're not trying
What
to
date would we have to have?
negotiate in a public meeting
Yes.
without having a meeting. I don't want to do that.
I think probably close of business on July 15th, Tuesday, July 15th, in order to get it.
Yeah, to get an
packet for the
agenda.
Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
Okay, close on Tuesday. Okay.
So do you want to send those names to myself or to Nick?
Well, so I guess I'm going down the path of, I mean, if there's names provided and they can be shared internal to the organization as the agenda is being put together, that'll give you an opportunity to see some names. As I say, I don't know that I'm going to get near, you know, the dynamics of what you're trying to think through there. But I don't mind sharing information on that Tuesday, as I say, as long as we're not doing something in a quorum type decision-making process.
You could email those names to the 3 of us or to one of us. We can decide and we'll let you know which one. And then we would include that in the staff report for the conversation. So it would get published
Oh, but
publicly
I
on
mean, he's
Friday.
asking to
Yeah.
see or understand the
Yeah, I'm
dynamics
I'm
before it's
asking us-
published on the
yeah,
agenda.
I'm asking for us to have a discussion during one of our meetings, you know, in the open, to say, well, you know, I can make sure I appoint somebody from South County. I can make sure I appoint somebody from Sisters Country, et cetera, so that we can ensure we have adequate geographic representation. Because otherwise, if we don't coordinate in some fashion, we can't guarantee that. And, you know, to go back to the whole, you know, 2 and 2 and 3, the setup that you all chose. I mean, I believe the rationale given for offering me 3 nominations was, oh, well, you live in Bend and a lot of people live in Bend, so how about you get 3? So, you know, I'm trying to understand whether that means I'm supposed to be appointing people, all, you know, 3 people from Bend or not.
This is actually, we only have 2008 people in Deschutes County, 2,008,000.
200,000.
200, excuse me. Anyway, we all were voted in representing the entire county. It's 3,055 square miles. You know, people are going to be incredibly responsible and respectful of the process that we're appointing. And I don't think I don't think you should be as concerned as you seem to be. I do believe that this is an incredibly important process. Historically, looking at what LA County has done for decades, I'm hoping that we can match their longevity and success in being fair.
One potential option to keep staff from being in a position of sharing information or whatever the case may be, maybe just a staff report that says this is an agenda topic for the 21st, Monday, and the 23rd. Monday, the commissioners could announce whom they plan to appoint, and then on Wednesday is the discussion and the formal. I'm just trying to keep staff from being in the middle of sharing information among commissioners
Right.
that may or may not, that they're public documents. Will have requests for it as soon as we obtain it. So that's another option that we can.
So yeah,
or we just do it all. on the
15th of
23rd.
July, we're setting those agendas. Yeah. So as I say, we're back in that, you know, 15th of July is the date we would commit to getting information in for the agenda, unless we just keep it generic on the 21st to
Right.
put it to the 23rd.
And that's at the 21st and the 23rd, you actually have your discussion.
That's-
and you make.
I think that's probably a bit more comfortable. I know some of,
A work session.
some commissioners are going to be traveling, and so I think that might be more helpful.
Okay, well, I guess that could make it, so the 21st, we just share amongst ourselves and that's where we're doing
At
it.
the board meeting.
But we're not accepting or finalizing it until the 23rd.
Right. If I'm
That's
just.
fine with
throwing
me.
out this idea.
Because then
And
it
then
could
there can
change.
be fine tuning between
21st, 23rd.
initial thoughts on.
And they'll both be a public meeting and there won't be any shuttling internal.
That works for me.
There we go.
And we each should have one alternate, correct?
Oh yeah, do you support that? An alternate?
Sure.
So one alternate per person, per commissioner.
Right.
That's
And
fine with me.
Another question came up, this might be a question for Kim or legal counsel on this one was, are the nominees that you bring to the table, or do the majority of the commissioners need to vote to approve the committee members?
Thanks for getting clarity.
So this means, this means the board is appointing all 7 members that each commissioner has identified as their individual appointments. That's the question?
Yeah, the question that came up was, when the commissioner announces their nominee as their person, is that just the nominee, or does the majority of the board need then approve
Vote on it.
all 7 committee members?
It would just be the individual nominations of the.
Okay. Great. Thanks for that clarification. Great.
Thank you, Ms. Riley.
That's all I had, unless there is.
If I could just,
Yes.
one additional thought on that 21st date. If ultimately I will be appointing 3 people to this committee on the 23rd, I may very well, I actually probably intend to come to the 21st with 5 names. And that will, again, allow me to kind of work with, around, in response to, what I'm hearing from the other 2 commissioners to try to get to more, more comprehensive representation and balance. And, maybe all of us could do that.
Yeah.
Come with a list a little longer than the ultimate number of appointments that we're going to make.
But I do believe that this is incredibly serious commitment for somebody if they're going to have 2-hour meetings starting September 9th through November 19th. And so, clearly the people that we are offering to serve on that committee are going to recognize their commitment, their time commitment, and the seriousness of the issue.
And that just brings up maybe a question about the alternate. Would it be more valuable to not list a name of an alternate, but have in the guidelines the acknowledgement that the person responsible for that initial appointment would be responsible for appointing an alternate should there be a vacancy? Because you might have more than one. And if you acknowledge one in that first meeting, as you said, Commissioner Dare, with a long commitment, you might wind up having more than just the one. And if you only had one listed, then what? So having the acknowledgement in the guideline that you're responsible for appointment.
So just a generic statement saying alternate may be appointed during the process by the commissioner but not have it published name.
It's just a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are we operating under the assumption that these meetings will be recorded?
So that is the discussion of our working group next week. Our topic, we've had some guidance from legal on that, and we'd like some clarification on some questions we have on how these meetings will be run. So, and that will again be in the draft guidelines for commissioners' ultimate decision on the process there.
And when are the draft guidelines going to be discussed? I'm looking.
So we don't have that date yet. We started it last meeting, and as you can see, just even from this conversation, when you start taking even one thread, it opens up a lot of other threads. So we hope to we're about halfway through, but the meat of the guidelines are where we need to go. So probably
We can do them at the same time, I guess. Is that the vision at all? The 23rd? Or following?
That was not quite the vision, but it definitely could be. Just
I'm not asking for that. So would we do it after?
that could be a very long discussion. So I think with the intent to have the orientation in August, probably mid to later August.
Following.
Yeah,
that's
so
all. I mean, just
hopefully
the
beginning
general
of
idea
August,
today
yeah.
is
Yeah.
The clarity on what the guidance is going to be will be after the appointment process.
Yes, I believe it'll be after the appointment process. And just for clarification as well, I'm going to be out the week of the 21st. So Nick and Steve will be before you for those conversations. But we'll look to bring the guidelines as soon as possible. But I think early August is where we'll aim for that date.
Right after the fair.
Right after the fair, not during.
Yes, thank you.
County fair.
That's all we had unless there was any other questions or comments from the commissioners.
Anything else?
I mean, just to follow that thought about recordings, if the meetings are recorded, then I wouldn't see a need to require alternates to attend all the meetings, because they can just go back and catch up later. But if the meetings aren't recorded in any way, then that might be something to consider, is asking alternates to, just like with juries, you got to be there so you know what's happening in case you get called in.
There will be a record of the meetings, either meeting minutes, recording, or both. And again, ultimately, that will be your decision, but there is an advantage to that if for some reason an alternate needed to join the meetings. But we'll take that into consideration for a suggestion for your ultimate approval.
So just one other thought here. I mean, I'm doing this to serve everyone in the county. Everybody that lives here, works here, plays here. An elector is the key to this, obviously, but it is for everyone. And I run for office for everyone too. So, slicing and dicing and who served and whatever, that's a concept, but it's not where I'm starting from. So I'm just pointing out that is exactly my mindset: serving everyone, cost-effective services for everybody. Deschutes County's a special level of government, long history here. This will be going into the 110th year too. I was thinking we just had the centennial, but now there's 10 years later already. So special moment. Okay, anything else? Seeing none, moving on.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen. Thank you, Steve.
So added item, potential sheriff transition. So this is going to finish up our day here, other than other items. Do we have executive session? Oh, yeah, we do.
Yes, we do.
We do have executive session also. So potential sheriff transition. So this is for us to discuss. I don't know if there's any other guidance or introduction to this topic. I mean, I guess, yeah, we have a date and we're working backwards.
Thank you, Commissioners. I don't have any prepared remarks other than the clerk, Steve Dennison, who just left, and I will be monitoring our emails through tomorrow at 5 o'clock, which is when the forthcoming resignation will be binding. And unless we hear something before that time, the board is not meeting after today unless there's an emergency of some sort for two commissioners to convene, but otherwise not planning to meet until Monday, July 21st. So we thought a continuation of Monday afternoon's discussion today to discuss what a potential transition may look like. If the board wishes to continue that conversation now, then I sort of turn it over to you.
This is for us, and this is good. As I say, it's happening fast. What I think of is basically we're working back from a date now. And, once binding, the terminology binding is, then we really know we have a date to work back from. So that is the end of this month. One question I have very specifically is there a hard requirement to make this appointment before that 31st date or on that 31st date, or could it be a week later? I don't know if it really matters or not. Is there guidance to that?
I'm happy to defer to legal counsel if you wish.
Yeah, once the office becomes vacant, technically the undersheriff will take over the duties of the sheriff until an appointment is made for that vacancy.
Okay, so there isn't a panic to get a date at this point in time for appointment. Reasonable time. Okay, good. So that's what we're starting with. Reasonable time in response to a vacant sheriff's seat. So that's good clarity for me to understand. Yeah, as I say, this is for all three of us just to compare notes.
That said, I want to emphasize that one of the benefits of having someone appointed before July 31st, two benefits to think about are, number one, there is a cloud of uncertainty hanging over the team over at the sheriff's office right now, and the the sooner we help clear that up for people, help them know who's going to be their point person. I think, you know, the sooner we can provide relief to all the deputies, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and everyone else. So that's one consideration. Another consideration is having someone identified before the 31st does allow that person to meet with the outgoing sheriff, you know, hear what, you know, what they think are priorities, hear what they've been working on, and, you know, make the transition a little bit more seamless in that way. You know, and, you know, potentially be responsive to what they're hearing, positive or negative, but I think it improves the transition between, you know, the outgoing sheriff and the incoming interim. So those are two reasons for us to consider trying to make an appointment sooner than July 31st.
Any thoughts, Commissioner?
Actually, I would agree with that. I know they are having a venue. I believe it's been moved up to July 7th with people that are interested in running for the sheriff's office. And so since I'll be in town, I will be attending that event. You know, I've talked to a lot of people that work in the department. There's some really dedicated, truly conscientious people that are there, and to help with the seamlessness, I think is important. If we can possibly make our decision before 31st of July, I think would be really beneficial to a lot of really wonderful, good people that I'm hoping are going to want to stay with the department in Deschutes County. Their service is so, you know, they really work hard. There's so many different sides of the story that they're dealing with. You realize we just had another murder, and then we had a murder like 2 weeks before that. I mean, there are a lot of things that are not historically norm for our community. As our DA has mentioned, we normally used to have 1 or 2 murders a year, and it's clearly, it's a very, if you can imagine having to handle murder cases as we are now, I really feel like we need to help them as much as we can.
So you're referring to a July 7th event, and that's Deschutes County Sheriff's
Right.
Employee Association.
They invited us to that, and I believe if more than one of us go, it needs to be registered.
It either needs to be publicly noticed, or we need to agree not to say anything while we're there, to basically just go to listen.
No, that's why I'm going. I'm going to listen.
No? I'm looking at legal. Okay.
Right.
I mean,
So, and I said
I guess there's times when we attend, you know, ceremonies, other kinds of events, but this is because of the subject matter. If the two of us are there, even if we're just listening, okay. Well, you know, I'll share that I was planning on getting back into town that Monday at some point in the evening, and you know, after I heard that they were going to schedule for July 7th, I told the DCSEA that I would be there by 6 p.m. So 2 of us will be there.
So thank you, Brenda, if you'll notice that.
And I won't be there. Just happen to be scheduled out of town. So, but going down that path, I mean, this is a decision by the Board of Commissioners, and it'd be probably valuable to let our employee association understand. I mean, is this going to be some kind of expectation of appointment of a suggestion from the employee association, or a body of knowledge for people that have raised their hand, because they're not candidates, but people that raise their hand for appointment. So I'm just saying, this is where we can talk about this a little bit right now.
Well, you notice I did see a notice that William Bailey is no longer in the running. I think that just came out. So, yes.
But I'm just pointing out this is a decision.
There's a lot of clarity that is happening.
Yeah, I you know, in response to the thought you raised, you know, when the DCSEA shared this idea with me, I said I thought it was a great idea because again, one of my goals in this process is for us to have transparency for, you know, a lot of people to get to hear from all of the, you know, top candidates for appointment, you know, who they are, what they think they can do for the sheriff's office, why they think that they would make a good interim sheriff. So this forum that the DCSCA is putting on, I think is a great opportunity to make that happen. That said, I also said, you know, I also clearly said to them, you know, this is still the Board of Commissioners' decision. I very much value the opportunity to hear from candidates, you know, for appointment in this forum. But that, you know, that does not bind us to decide anything the way that the Sheriff's Employees Association, you know, survey indicates that they would like it to go. You know, I will certainly take that into serious consideration, just like when there was an actual election running last year, the endorsement of the Sheriff's Employees Association was extremely important, you know, in my consideration of the candidates. But it is not a bind. It's not, in my opinion, it's not binding on the Board of Commissioners.
And this is our opportunity just to talk it out a little bit, you know, before this all happens.
And the really important part to remember in this is that this is actually a 1.5-year interim appointment, which in our world is really quite a long time. So we do want to select the person that we feel will help with that seamless transition and bring back the transparency and respect that that department should be recognized with.
I mean, I will also add that while I think this forum that the DCSCA is going to hold is a great opportunity for people to hear from the candidates directly, the candidates for appointment, I would also like for us to have to collect from anyone who wants to be considered some kind of a written statement, and for those to be publicly available for people as well.
So as I say, we don't have a open position till possibly tomorrow at 5, and it's just not, that's why we're right before that, but we just not having a meeting following this for a couple of weeks. So yeah, do we want to ask for that, you know, today, you know, if and when it's binding, we start to ask for people to put on a piece of paper that I would be honored to be appointed sheriff, you know, just to start a process.
Yes, and again, just lay out their case. And since we're not meeting again until July 21st, this is the time for us to make that choice.
And that's why we're talking today. Do you support that or ask for that also?
Sure.
So that's the Board of Commissioners asking for somebody who wants to be appointed to be the sheriff. We do think of it as about 1.5 years. It's going to be the process to at least acknowledge in writing, whatever that looks like.
And if the board is inclined to make an appointment prior to July 31st, as you're aware, you meet on July 21st and 23rd. You would then also meet the following Monday, July 28th. Of course, you could conduct a special meeting if you wished on Tuesday, the 29th. The fair does begin on the 30th, so you could meet earlier. And I know opening the fair is always a very big deal, as is this. So I'm just kind of laying out the calendar of what that could look like.
We should put,
Amazing, huh?
perhaps put a hold on July 29th, Brenda. I mean,
Tuesday.
yeah, just because that's going to be really important. Thank you, Nick, for pointing that out. I think that's,
Yeah.
yes, the fair opening ceremony, of course, we're going to want to be there. But Tuesday, yes, if you could get in our I think that's great.
You support that? That may be the day. Okay.
I mean, and you know, to just one more thought on the DCSCA forum, I hope that the association will record this meeting so that in this forum, so that all 3 commissioners can basically get the same experience of hearing what was presented by the various candidates for appointment.
Great. So as I say, this is what we have now. Anything else? And any other thoughts from Anyone? Okay, seeing none, we'll be done with,
Actually, I want to comment that I'm really thankful he's leaving a month early. I think, and we're in a position to help with the transition earlier rather than, September 3rd or so. I think it's, yeah, I'm relieved that I'm hoping it will be official tomorrow. So thank you for that.
I also still had a couple questions.
sure.
So we received, I think all three of us received a letter from someone with a long history of service at the DC SO, whose the address that he put on his letter was in Spray, Oregon. And so I asked legal counsel to clarify for me whether there was a way that this person could, because he specifically said he thought he was still eligible, even though he resides in Spray right now. So I asked legal counsel to comment on that. I'd like just to get it, out in public on the record, what that response was, if, Dave or the clerk or Kim would be willing to.
So
to hear that
certified
was-
DPSST in the state of Oregon, but not an elector or a resident of Deschutes County. That's the scenario it sounds like.
Yeah, Dave Doyle, County Council. Yeah, the fellow from Spray was incorrect in his belief that he could be appointed sheriff. He's not a resident. He has to be a resident at least 12 months before the election. And I think Steve's concluded the election would be November. So he has to be a resident for at least 12 months before November 2026.
And for the record, his name is Mitch Elliott.
So then an appointment cannot happen with somebody in that scenario.
I mean,
That person cannot be appointed.
Person would have to be a resident here 1 year prior to the election. And I believe Secretary of State confirmed for you that would be the November, not the May, because technically in May, it's a nomination election for sheriff, right? Even if someone gets 50% plus one in May, they go to the ballot in November. So the election to get elected is in November.
But it's not November 2025 yet.
Correct. So if the fellow wants to move here, take up residency here, potentially could be appointed.
Okay, so if he
Right
wants-
now,
if
the
he-
person's not a resident.
If he wanted to move here right now, he could be eligible for an appointment as an interim.
I just, Steve Dennison, County Clerk, for the record, ORS 236-210, the county court or board, sorry, I'm looking down the microphone. County court or board of the county commissioners shall appoint a person to perform the duties of the office until the vacancy is filled by election. And then sub 4 is the person shall qualify in the same manner as required by law of the officer whose place the person is appointed. So that means that the person that is appointed needs to meet the qualifications of sheriff.
At the time of appointment.
Yes.
So
That's my interpretation.
So they have to live here in Deschutes County.
So they have to have been living here for a year before July 31st, if we make an appointment by that time.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for that clarification.
My other question was, there was a question from Carol Stiles about the concept of an administrator as opposed to appointing an interim sheriff. And I was curious, to be able to appoint somebody who may not meet all the requirements, for an interim sheriff, but could essentially function as the chief executive of the sheriff's office. And it was a interesting idea to me. I wanted to just put that out there, and if it takes a little bit of legal research to be able to actually answer that, I can wait until later to hear a response back. But any initial thoughts on that?
Well, the statute says the office becomes vacant, among other things, upon the resignation. So assuming it's not withdrawn, the office is vacant as of the date of that resignation. I think it's July 31. Other statute requires that the board shall appoint someone to fill that vacancy until the election occurs. So I don't believe you have a basis to create an administrator to
Leader.
oversee that. There needs to be a person under the title of sheriff in that office. And the board is obligated and mandated by statute to fill that vacancy.
Got it. And until that time, it's, the authority, resides with the undersheriff, as Kim said.
Right. And it doesn't put a timeline. And typically when there's not a timeline, the courts have interpreted a reasonable time. And that's why we're comfortable. You don't have to have the appointment as of July 31st or August 1st, but you probably having it go a whole lot longer wouldn't be advisable either.
Well, that helps. That's helpful. So we are in the shall situation. You shall do this. The July 31st is not a hard stop at this point. The goal is to try to see if we can do something on the 29th in preparation, which is about 5 weeks from now or whenever, almost that. But if it slips, that's not going to be a problem. But the goal is to complete the process, not let it go for the undersheriff for a year and a half either. That helps get everybody on the same page.
Great.
Well, so yeah, assuming tomorrow we have a binding situation, because that we're still right before that. Any thoughts on the date?
Yeah,
So I know.
I mean, if the candidate forum is until July 7th, then I don't see a rush to do it. If, maybe a day or two before that. Or July 7th is a Monday.
Monday after the 4th of July weekend.
right.
4th is Friday or Thursday?
It's
Friday, I believe.
Friday. Friday.
July 3rd?
Or is there a rush? I mean, July 11th, which is a Friday.
I would think July 11th would be okay.
I mean, because we just happen to have some time in there. Because, I mean, we can communicate with people, but that'll be the, here's the signature on a
This
piece
is-
of paper that says, I really want to do this.
Yes, July 11th.
Bless you.
Actually give them time, do their presentation, and then maybe they'll have some, personal feedback from that event. And so I think that would be appropriate.
July 11th at 5 o'clock is us setting a date and a time.
5 PM, okay.
Great. As I say, I do, the sheriff's office, the deputies on the street, I say it's a soap opera, which is a shame we're in this situation, but supporting public safety in Deschutes County is always number one. When we look at our Deschutes County goals and priorities, goals and objectives, public safety. So, I do support, the whole system here. I'm sure we all do. Funding the deputies in the street, incarceration, the whole throughput of public safety is very important in Deschutes County. So I'm not taking this lightly, and I'm sure none of us are. Anything else? Okay. So at this time, other items, it's about time for a stand-up break, one of those days where we just kept powering through. And then we have an then we do have an executive
I know,
session, so.
just a 5-minute.
So let's take a 5-minute break. We'll do other items and then we'll work
Cover-
our way to an executive session. Great. Good.
Thank you for having.
Okay, we are back. So this is other items and before an executive session today. And yeah, Cam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Cam Sparks, Budget Manager for the record. I wanted to make you aware that I'll be bringing a fiscal year 25 budget adjustment resolution to the legislative update meeting on Friday. This item is to correct a minor error in Resolution 2025-007, which the board approved on June 18th. So the original resolution indicated an increase of 71,000 in program expense and 161,800 in transfer out appropriations for the TRT fund. However, those numbers were transposed. It should have been 161,800 in program expense and 71,000 in transfers out. And this is just to make sure that we have the appropriations to make that pass through to Visit Central Oregon. And so I recognize this is an unusual to present this type of item at the legislative meeting on Friday, but the correction does need to be made before
For
June
year-end.
30th. And unfortunately, due to timing constraints, I wasn't able to get it on today's agenda.
Okay, well, yeah, so we're at a public meeting documenting that we're going to do the business of the public in another public meeting. So I think we're going to be okay. So,
So we'll have to have a vote then at the meeting?
Yes, you'll approve the resolution. It's a Scrivener's error resolution.
mhm. And that'll be republishing that agenda. Okay. So a notice of intent.
Cody may be on right now. I don't know if
Oh, okay, yeah,
he
maybe.
needs to explain it or not. Maybe not. He is on.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, Cody Smith, you're next. So are you all set? Great, thank you so much. Welcome, Cody. Yeah, it could be. There we go.
There I am.
Thank you. So this is other items.
Good afternoon. For the record, real quick, Cody Smith, County Engineer. Yeah, Board, so I had a kind of a last minute item I needed you to take action on. Unfortunately, because I was on vacation last week, I wasn't able to get it on your agenda for today's meeting, but we have a notice of intent to award for our paving of Tumalo Road project that we want to get before you so we can get that contract awarded by mid-July. We anticipate our contractor wants to start that project towards the end of July. If we have to wait until your next meeting, July 21st, that's not going to make it possible for us to start that work in the month of July. So similar to the previous item, I think that's going to be before you at your the tail end of your Friday legislative update. So, but that's the reason why.
Okay, we can handle that. So same scenario, public meeting notifying that 2 days from now, we're going to have a new item on our agenda.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other items, Nick? Okay, so just a note, Eastern Oregon Counties Association scheduled for July 23rd. Also, we'll probably have a very full day, but I think it's like at 2:00 in the afternoon to start. So just a note, I mean, the priority would be at this meeting if we're going to have to go for a long meeting, but that's the date that's been set for the next Eastern Oregon Counties Association meeting, which will probably be a follow-up to the legislative session. Anything else?
I'll share that yesterday evening, both myself and Commissioner Adair were at a community conversation about homelessness in Sisters. About 6 months ago, they had a similar forum where there were 4 action areas established, things like public safety, services, community education and outreach. The fourth one was, production of affordable housing. And at this forum, there was a lot of reporting back on progress on all of those action items.
Great. Anything else, Commissioner Adair?
No, but the news story said that the homeless count per the pit count actually doubled in Sisters, and then it's gone up even more since China had let go. So there are clearly serious issues out there. And then there was that story that was on the news regarding someone who was just camping there for one night and had a really unfortunate incident. So people need to be careful.
On the specific question of China Hat Road, I asked a number of people, law enforcement, service providers, and others about whether they had seen an increase in homeless encampments, in the immediate aftermath of the clearance of all those people from the Cabin View project area, and they said pretty minimal. So I thought that was actually pretty interesting. Everybody just went to Juniper Ridge, I guess.
Yes, hopefully Ryan's going to be back next week, maybe, and he can do an official count, but I was told it could be up to 180 people, though I've seen a difference in sisters on the other side. So there are people that are there. Are there the summer residents that come and spend, they spend their summers in Sisters because it's a really pretty place.
Okay, anything else? Seeing none, time for an executive session.
The Deschutes County Board of Commissioners will now convene an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660. The specific authorization for this executive session is ORS 192.660, subsection 2D, which allows the board to meet in order to discuss labor negotiations. Designated staff and the media are allowed to remain during the executive session. However, the media may only report that the board met in executive session and the identified basis for meeting in executive session. Recording devices are not permitted. No final decisions will be made, and at the conclusion, we will open the doors and invite the audience back to the meeting.
So, going to executive session with microphones and turned off.